Well, good morning, damn fam. Today is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026, and on today's Daily Beaver Morning Show, we are going to talk about Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who has his hands full with an expense scandal with his MPPs, which kind of sends the indication that the rot may have traveled down from the fish head. And we also will be talking about other cases involving justice or fairness or ethics, little updates on a few things we've been following, because, I think you will be interested in certain of the developments that we have. And of course, we're going to talk about Canada delivering the ultimate mwah, Canadian response to Trump's taco tariffs. So grab your favorite bevy and make yourself comfortable because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6. And I believe it is episode number 950, closing in on that 1000 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian, and of course, always beaverific. Today, recording day is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. And as you can tell by the sun on my face, it is a gorgeous day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the eager beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A with some eyebrows going. And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Damn fam, how is your mental health doing today? I have to say, I am doing well. I'm doing surprisingly well, actually, considering, you know, all the BS that is befalling us and all the threats that we're under and all that kind of stuff. But I'm doing surprisingly well. We had some rain and gray a little bit yesterday, so it was a little gloomy at one point. And at one point, I wanted to do something, but the weather didn't really cooperate. So I had a tiny little bit of a dip, but overall, doing very well and in a good mood, in good spirits, and very much looking forward to today's show. So, not enough sleep, however. That's the only exception. Not enough sleep. but overall, and not enough tennis with all the rain and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, they're the extremely hot weather and stuff. So I've got some matches scheduled. Well, a match scheduled for Thursday this week. At least I'll have that. But yeah, I'm missing it. I've been finding it more difficult um, to um, to find matches this year. Now, two of the players I usually play against have been injured for the first part of the year, so that's had something to do with it either. But it's almost like I used to be able to put a notice that I was available for a match, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, and by 8 or 9 o'clock, I would have something for that day. And now it seems I have to put the notices out about 2 days ahead of when I want to play. To actually get somebody to take me up on it. So I'm not sure what's going on this year. It's just a bit more of a different vibe. But hopefully, I'll figure it out how it is that it's working and develop my roster again, and we'll be able to play regularly again because I am missing it. I'm not getting as much in this year as I would like to. And I also got some bad news in that my men's senior curling team, the one with whom we won the C Division championship last year, uh, we're not staying together. Oh, two of the members of the team have decided to say like about 3 years is what they like to do with the team, and then move on and do other things. Don't know if the other one who did not want to move on will be staying, or will want to well, whether or not we can be on a team together. Number one, that would be one thing, but if that's possible, uh, because the rules are that if at least two members of the team return, you keep your standing. So it would be nice to return to C division rather than back down to D on a whole new team, unless I get drafted by a team that's playing at a higher level. That could happen too. But yeah, would be interested to play with all of them again. We had a good chemistry and we had our best season yet. But there are people like that who like to play, especially recreationally. Have an opportunity to play with different people and learn different things and stuff like that. So the band is breaking up. I'm so sad. I really like them. It was a good team. They're good blokes. But so yeah, uh, hey, that's the thing, right? People move on. My happened also with my mixed doubles buddy. Hey, Celia. After a couple of years together, you know, curling schedules changed. One of the leagues changed times, and it's like if she has to choose between her competitive women's team and me, well, the competitive women's team wins. So, and then I lost my buddy. Well, not my buddy in my friendship, of course, but just for my mixed doubles curling, because we had some good. We again, after you play together for a couple of years, you start to get to know each other, and you sync up. Let's put it that way. So yeah, but that's the thing. I know. Thank you, Kit Linda. That's too bad. Hopefully, you can find another team. I'm sure that finding another team is not going to be too hard, but because we have people that put us together. But yeah, it's still. Oh. it was. It, I, I'm a person who stays. A little bit like my Tuesday night team. You know, I got there the first year that I was eligible to play on Tuesday nights. They had lost somebody on their team. They picked me up. I came in, curled two match. They decided they would keep me. I've been with the team ever since. Three of the four of us have been on the team since I joined. Right? There's one person that dropped out after COVID. Um, but right, and like so long as the team will have me, I'll just keep showing up. Let's work together and see what this baby can do. So when we get a groove on, right, and you start improving, it's sort of like well, like I said, one of those things. You just like, hey, let's see what this can do. But not everybody has the same internal hardwiring. That's why I think it's harder these days to try to move up the ladder in competitive curling. Not only is because now that there are some incentive, the better teams are the better teams, and there's sort of like a gap in between with not. Um, it's hard to make the jump, particularly since there's very few teams that could live off the sport itself. The cash prizes are still not that big when you consider travel and all that type of stuff that's involved. So that step up mechanism to the higher level still isn't there yet. But when you're at the club level, um, you know, it's a little harder sometimes uh, to keep a group together. You know, life happens. Number one, that's always a tricky part. Um, injuries, health as well. That happens, particularly on senior teams. Let's be honest. Often it's an issue. So, but it's and as abilities drop over time, sometimes the reasons for which people play drops. It becomes more of a social thing rather than a competitive thing. Some people are never really competitive. It's just not their nature or why they play the sport, because curling is very much a social sport as well. So it's a for some people it's just the outing and spending time with people that you enjoy, right? And doing something fun. And for some others of us who happen to be a little more competitive, but hey, you know what? I'm the entrance age for seniors curling is 50, and I'm 53. So relatively speaking, I am still a spring chicken in that group. So um, uh, and I'm a good sweeper. Just saying. So my prospects look good. Mm. I wonder if I'll be able to. I wonder if the teams shake up whatnot, whether or not I'll be skipping again, or whether or not I'd be put in another position. However, that could be an interesting thing. We'll find out. We'll find out. All right, kits and cubs, let's delve into it because we have a lot to talk about, and the juicy thing on the menu. It's been going on for a little bit now, but Doug Ford seems to have been having had a lot of problems. Now, he's been having a lot of problems for quite a while now, which has translated to his personal popularity and approval ratings taking a bit of a hit. I believe, according to the last quarterly Angus Reid's premier approval numbers, he was in the toilet pretty much with 21% approval, which was a 10% drop in a quarter and the lowest he's ever been. I'm not sure if it was the lowest number ever recorded in those types of surveys, but that's pretty um, pretty down low. Let's put it that way. And it wasn't seeming to get better for him, and just a series of bad decisions after bad decisions after bad decisions have been hobbling him to the point that some people have been wondering whether or not his caucus might be thinking of throwing him overboard at some point, or whether or not he'll actually want to finish his term, because if he's got a lot of time left to go, and it's going to be like this or getting worse, because he doesn't appear to like the scrutiny. 21 weeks off and still run into the cameras, and when he's facing a little scrutiny, get a little testy. Been rather testy of late. Doug Ford has been. Just you know, just saying. Ooh, some news here from Kit Uncover. Details of the Gordie Howe Bridge released amid political pressure. Indeed, there has been a lot of political pressure. I'm going to go look that up because we will be needing that today if we have that. All right. Because we're going to be talking about that today. So I'm glad I saw it there go by the chat. Just made a little note of it to make sure that I have it with us for when we talk about it. For Doug Ford, if we're doing a long review thing here, the original sin is the Greenbelt thing, right, in this particular administration, because he promised that it would never be touched. And then we found out that there were some wheeling and dealing in the back, may or may not have had anything to do, or Stephen Clark may or may not have had a role. He got moved out of that portfolio for a bit. And then a whole bunch of other people as well, of course. Whole system that appeared to be designed so that the premier could not know, but seemed to have been done so in a manner so as to, well, one could suspect willful blindness would occur as a result. And what we found is that there was video of him stating, right, that he was going to open that up. And they promised not to touch that. And then we found out that he was feeling it up like crazy. He was, oh, okay, you caught me. And then there were all a bunch of other deals. But when he promised not to touch it, and then we found out that he just tried to touch it through a different way, that's when we learned what a Doug Ford promise was worth. And nothing has changed. Nothing has surfaced since then to change that opinion. Because we saw it with the gravy plane, which was the latest, or which was the beginning of the latest descent into scandal. I'm sure there was a whole bunch of other stuff, but that was the one that kind of hit home. Right? Didn't even talk about it, didn't mention it, wasn't put into the budget. And then once it was done, we found out that he had himself a plane. No longer the days of, I'm the premier that doesn't take these types of things. Now he's got himself a luxury jet. In the current context, people didn't really take to that too kindly. So he promised he would sell it back. And then when he sold it back, we found out that, well, it wasn't just the cost of the plane, but there was about $200,000 extra. Shipping, handling, maintenance, legal fees, that kind of stuff. When you have a transaction like that. And then we found out, we haven't reported this on the show, but that Doug Ford was still using the gravy plane, allegedly. Because if you remember, we kept on asking for the receipts to see if he had sold it back and whether or not we got our money and we sold it back for everything. And then we saw him keep on trying to justify it wasn't a mistake, and other leaders of the world are looking at me and laughing because they all have a jet and I don't. Right? And the problem with this is that it goes against Doug Ford's, right, populist, I never charge any personal expenses. I'm here for the little guy. Right? That's his whole brand. So it was in May, around mid-May, that we found out that Ontario taxpayers were on the hook for nearly $200,000 after Doug Ford allegedly returned the gravy plane to Bombardier. But then, I believe it was through Tina Yazdani, it might have been, that Doug Ford, maybe, I'm not sure if it was ever confirmed as a fact, but leasing the plane, the very same plane, So apparently, the plane was sent back to Bombardier, but it seems that there might be a company that has it now that Doug Ford is paying when he needs to lease such a plane, to lease the very one that he bought and then returned. So he's still using it. Well, that is kind of interesting. And it goes to, if this is indeed true, right? It goes to show that when Doug Ford says that he is not going to do something, especially when he gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar and then he goes, ow, because the lid of the cookie jar came down hard on his hand. It's not that he is not going to do it anymore. It's just that he's going to find another way, another reason, another justification. But when Doug Ford doesn't really abandon anything. He might delay it. He might take a couple of steps back. But he doesn't really let it go. Doesn't really let it go. Um, I think there's a section here with the O Show with Laura Babcock where she is talking to Merritt Stiles that is dealing with this issue. And so let's, I'm just going to bring it here to you. And hopefully this is the bit that I'm looking for because I didn't timestamp it. I'm going based on the transcript here. But here we go.
Announcements, attempts at hiding information, more use of the gravy plane. I'm calling it gravy plane 2.0 because it seems like Ford is still getting in that plane and flying to the US. So Merritt, why don't we start with the gravy plane? Because I think people are just frustrated and stunned that there's been new reporting that that same jet got sold back. He apparently uses it, charges what, $10,000 an hour or something to Ontarians to fly it, going down to the US to do what? I'm not sure. So where are we with the gravy plane?
Well, first of all, yeah, I mean, this is the scandal that just keeps going. And I think what's so remarkable about it is, when we first found out about this, when back in the spring, and we knew that Doug Ford was, obviously always making choices that serve himself and his insiders. I will say, when he reversed course, I thought, okay, good. Let's put that away. But he didn't stop, right? He dug in. He said, "Look, I really should have done this. I just communicated it wrong. I really deserve this." And so it was really, unfortunately, no surprise to me to find out that he's now chartering that very same plane at enormous expense to Ontarians to fly all around North America, and on what amount to, I think, generally photo ops. Now, I will see what comes of some of these memorandums of understanding he's signing down there. But again, like, this is at enormous cost to Ontarians. Other premiers, we've done the research. They fly commercial, right? And so there's definitely ways to fly commercial to all of these places. So he has no excuse. He just wants to fly in luxury. He thinks he deserves it. And it shows you again how completely out of touch he is with where regular Ontarians are at right now.
All right. So that's what we're talking about here. It would appear, if my data is correct, that there is a company called Chartrite. Now, I'm not sure if Doug Ford sold the plane back to Chartrite rather than Bombardier. Or if he sold it back to Bombardier, and Bombardier had sold it to Chartwright, and now he's leasing it that way or chartering it that way. But yes, Chartwright Air Group is a company that he frequently used. So there is, let me put it this way. If he arranged to sell it to Bombardier and have Bombardier have Chartwright buy it, so then he can then just charter it from Chartwright, there is no difference. Whether we buy it $28.5 million, or whether, okay, I can't have my plane that way, then you do that, you sell it to the chartering company that I already charter things from, and then I will just charter the plane instead. Over and over and over and over again. There is a, when a bill comes due, it gets paid no matter what. And if it can't get paid by the original way because the plan did not survive first contact, there are other chess pieces that can be moved to make sure that you get your money. Is the vibe that I'm getting from all of this. Kid Argosy, I'm mesmerized by Douglas's ring. This one here? Kid Argosy? Just wondering if it's the blue one here. But yeah. And it didn't get a lot of coverage. In fact, I'm looking a lot for this, for a newspaper article on it. I'm finding tweets by government representatives and other stuff like that. But an actual newspaper article, no. There is Twitter account from Stephen Watkins, writer and research consultant specializing in tracking ships and planes using publicly available information, if we can believe. And it says here, on June 26th, on June 23rd, Doug Ford's former Gravy plane was registered to its new owner, Chartwright, allowing Doug Ford to charter his Gravy plane anytime he likes and bill the Ontario taxpayers. CFBBW number COOD2D5 has been at the Bombardier facility at Bradley International in Connecticut since May 28th. Let's see, what else does he have here? Earlier than that. This is from April. Says here, with what you know now, I think you should go back to April 17th and see what a senior government official wanted Robert Benzie of the Toronto Star to tell you uncritically without researching the available information from open sources about the plane. They said it was purchased through Bombardier, but the Transport Canada Canadian Civil Aircraft Registry shows the Government of Ontario was never registered owner of the only plane that fits their description. The official made a point of noting the Quebec government recently spent $107 million on 3 Challengers, 2 of which were brand new. The official didn't want Robert Benzie to mention their air ambulances. Their point was not fact-checked. Plus, Prime Minister Carney's Liberal government is spending $753 million on 6 Bombardier Global 6500 jets to replace the last 4 planes, the Royal Canadian Air Force's aging Challenger fleet. That was a quote that was made to defend the Ontario purchase. An asinine partisan talking point with no comparison or merit. Quote, Ontario has twice the landmass of Texas, said the official. This was another excuse that was given for getting the Gravy plane. Uncritically parroting a senior government official with an agenda is journalistic malpractice. The plane can operate from 10% or 19 airports in Ontario, so size comparisons with Texas are irrelevant. And that's what we found out after, right? I need this because I'm going all over Ontario, particularly those northern communities. And then we found out, because of the size of the plane, there was only 10% of airports in Ontario where that plane could actually land. Noting the Premier has been traveling more to drum up business for Ontario. Again, Binzi uncritically repeats the talking points he's fed without asking why the Ontario Premier can't use charter aircraft or fly commercial like his peers. Um, so, uh, and then this person predicted on April 23rd, if reporting on Doug Ford's gravy plane has ruined the plan, it won't come to fruition. But if the next buyer is a charter company which already flies the Bombardier Challenger 650 Sky Service chart rate, I'm going to be very smug. And that's where this came from. Him saying, I am very smug indeed. It would make sense that the intent was always to funnel the plane to Chartwright. It never made any sense for the MNR to buy a Bombardier Challenger. And that was on June 26th. To which he adds, on June 26th, the Bombardier Challenger Doug Ford bought with the MNR black budget that he sold back to Bombardier at a loss of $200,000 has been sold to Chartwright, who provided Doug Ford with his aviation charter services at $10,000 an hour, so Doug Ford gets his happy ending after all. And that was picked up by Lee Fairclough, who is likely going to be one of the candidates for the Ontario Liberal Party leadership, who cited that and said Doug Ford didn't get rid of his gravy plane. He just found a way to keep flying it on your dime. The taxpayer-funded Bombardier Challenger was sold at $200,000 loss to Chartwright, the same company now chartering it back to Ford at $10,000 an hour, also billed to Ontario. Yeah. Not impressive, is it? But that's Doug Ford for you. That's Doug Ford for you. And at $10,000 an hour, if it's chartered for 2,900 hours, that's the price of the plane. I'm just saying. By hook or by rook, Doug Ford, when he's entitled to something, seems to get it. So you look at what Doug Ford has been doing, right? And the gravy plane is also linked to the, that van or car or whatnot that he wanted refurbished for when he had to do longer trips when he came into office, and that was denied to him. But now that he's been in office for eight or so years, with the first few years allegedly, according to him, not flying luxury at all, well, now he's just kind of entitled, right? I've done it for years, so I don't have to do it anymore, I guess, is his thinking. Of course, that's not how it works, right? He tried to sneak that in on us. So when you're looking at that, and then all the other scandals, I guess were potential scandals, the Service Canada stuff, the Skills Development Fund stuff, Ontario Place, Ontario Science Center stuff, the Therm Spa, particularly the garage, you name it. There's no end, right, of it with this guy. At some point, right, there are even allegedly police investigations into him, even though we never hear anything about how they're progressing. But the sense that the premier might be the most corrupt premier in Ontario history, and maybe one of the most corrupt premiers in Ontario history, that opinion is not as rare as it should be when it comes to someone who is leading So we have a situation now where we're seeming to learn that that sense of entitlement when it comes to spending our tax dollars as Ontarians um, is maybe part of the corporate culture of the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party. Because there have been a couple of MPPs who have been caught doing things with tax dollars that either they can't really explain or perhaps just should not have been doing. And even though there are a lot of people who are involved with this, how would I say? Um, uh, Everybody may not be involved at the same level, and one has to look into the specific expenses and the justifications um, for them for us to be sure that these are expenses that may not have been okay. But there's still, at first blush, more than a handful, I'm going to say, of people who have expenses that do need to be looked into, right? They could be all perfectly reasonable, but do need to be looked into. And one of the first peoples whose name came up in all of this is Stan Cho, who has resigned from cabinet, but not from caucus, and has not yet been booted from caucus, which is prompting a lot of questions from the, well, not from the premier, but to the premier. So, according to Jack Howen and Steve Cornwell of the Trillium, and if you live in Ontario, I really recommend that you subscribe to trillium.ca. Several Ford government MPPs have billed taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars for short-term Toronto accommodations despite representing Toronto area ridings. MPPs who live more than 50 kilometers from Queen's Park can be reimbursed for Toronto rentals so they can conduct legislative business without traveling back and forth to their home ridings. Those who live closer are allowed to do so in short-term special or unusual circumstances like a snowstorm. A total of 16 area progressive conservative MPPs have dipped into the special circumstances allowance in recent years to the tune of a combined $107,118, according to publicly available expense disclosures. Some have used the exception once or a handful of times over the years. Others, including 4 cabinet ministers who have access to taxpayer-funded vehicles and drivers, have racked up thousands of dollars in short-term stays during their time as an MPP. The biggest spender is Brampton East PC MPP Hardeep Grewal, the parliamentary assistant to the transportation minister, who has billed taxpayers for $28,008 in Toronto accommodation costs since his election in 2022. His constituency office is just over 40 kilometers from Queen's Park. A spokesperson for Premier Doug Ford's office responded to questions the Trillium sent to Grewal and other Toronto area PC MPPs that were reimbursed for special accommodations in the city. Quote, any expenses incurred that did not meet the spirit of the rules will be reimbursed to the legislature in full, Hannah Jensen wrote in an email. Jensen declined to answer follow-up questions about who will decide which amounts are to be reimbursed and when. Associate Small Business Minister Nina Tangri, who represents Mississauga Streetsville, spent $18,976 on Toronto stays over the past 3 years. Her constituency office is less than 40 kilometers away from the legislature. Global News reported that Tourism, Culture and Gaming Minister Stan Cho spent $16,203 on Toronto accommodations between 2023 and 2026, despite living just 6 kilometers from Queen's Park. He promised to pay back the entire amount. Brampton Centre MPP Charmaine Williams, the Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunity, billed the public purse for $15,865 in Toronto stays over the past 3 years. Cabinet Minister Stephen Crawford, who represents Oakville and Scarborough Centre MPP David Smith, each billed more than $6,500 in special circumstance accommodations in Toronto since 2023, the records show. Rookie PC MPPs Sylvia Gualtieri and Mohammed Firan have racked up $3,177 and $2,379, respectively, in special circumstance accommodation expenses since taking office in February 2025. For Gualtieri, who represents Mississauga Cooksville, the lion's share of her Toronto accommodations billing was a $2,625.59 stay back in May of 2025. Firan's York Southwestern constituency office is around 13 kilometers from Queen's Park. He billed taxpayers 3 times for special circumstance accommodations in Toronto, public records show, including a $990.89 stay in November 2025. As members of Cabinet, Tangri, Cho, Williams, and Crawford all have access to taxpayer-funded vehicles and drivers. In the early years of the Ford government, Toronto area PC MPPs rarely claimed the exemption. Things began to change a few years ago. Grual's reimbursements jumped from $733 in 2022-23 to $13,282 in the most recent fiscal year. And remember, if we're talking about special circumstances, like if you're making the claim, oh my God, I had to work late that night, or and just didn't have the distance to get, the energy to get home, or I was too tired to get home, or I had to, work really late, and then you had to be back at the legislature very, very early the next morning, right? Finished working at midnight, had to be back at the legislature at 6. That wasn't even 6 hours sleep, so I decided to sleep in town. Except consider the very few numbers of days the legislature has sat recently in Ontario. Would there be that many opportunities to rack up a bill that high? I'm sure there are other reasons for which there could be special circumstances. Doesn't have to be legislature sitting. I mean, MPs do go to many activities and events. Some of them that happen in the evening. Some that go late into the night. But there have been a lot of people wondering, with the $16,000 hotel bills when you live 40 kilometers away, ish. Were you alone in that room? A lot of people are wondering. Some of the smaller ones, 2,000 something, 990 or something, I can see over the course of 1 or 2 years. You can rack up that if something happened. I have a feeling that probably a lot of these might be able to be justified ultimately, but they do need to be looked into, because when you see the abuse at the higher levels, you do have to look at everyone and then make the determination. So again, just because their names are mentioned doesn't mean they necessarily did bad things. These are just the people who did spend money from that fund. So back to the previous paragraph, I'll start it over again. Grual's reimbursements jumped from $733 in 2022-2023 to $13,282 in the most recent fiscal year. Williams's more than doubled from $3,047 to $6,579 over the last 3 fiscal years, while Cho's spiked from $1,431 to $11,691 in that period. Quote, "It's got a kind of a luxury private jet vibe to it," interim Liberal leader John Fraser said, making the connection, right? And suggesting here that Doug Ford has created the cultural permission structure for this type of abuse in his party based on his own behavior. That's the suggestion being made here. Ford government MPPs are treating what should be an exception as a norm, he said. NDP leader Merritt Stiles said the MPPs should pay back the costs. I think it's outrageous, Stiles said. Not only should they reimburse this, but they also have to answer what were they staying in those hotel rooms for? Why? And why did they think it was acceptable to submit those expenses in the first place? I think they think that they deserve one kind of treatment. Everybody else deserves another, Stiles said. Ford's office did not comment by press time. While Cho has promised to repay his expenses, the others mentioned in this article did not respond to requests for comment. Fraser said he thinks MPPs felt entitled to the expenses. Why are they doing it? Because they can, he said, until they get caught. So, since we were talking about Mr. Cho here and various other things, let's see what we have here. Whoops, that was a mistake. Let's try that one more time. So let's see what we have here. Doug Ford, of course, has ordered several PC MPPs to pay back approximately $100,000 in public funds. Since then, Tourism Minister Stan Cho, as I mentioned, resigned from cabinet after disclosures revealed he expensed over $16,000 in Toronto hotel stays since 2023, alongside thousands more on high-end dining and vehicle rentals. And it would appear that maybe he wasn't honest when he first answered the question why it is he needed to spend all that money. Yeah, just saying. And with this special disclosure fund, there's also some questions about constituency association spending involving some of the similar names and some other names as well. But Charmaine Williams, is this on this list? No, this is not this constituency. Yeah. So yeah. So there's the special exemption thing, and then there's just general other constituency association spending issues that are rising as well. Now, this is not the first time. Sorry, I got something in my throat. That there are these types of issues within the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party. The Ontario PC Party issued an apology in 2021 after having sent out fundraising letters styled to look like official invoices. Opposition parties heavily criticized the tactic, which was designated to trick vulnerable individuals into donating to Premier Doug Ford's re-election campaign. And then in 2022, there was an MPP allowance controversy because several PC MPPs faced public backlash after it was revealed that they were receiving an untaxed housing allowance of up to $200 a day, despite being eligible for standard expense claims. Critics questioned the optics of the allowance, which prompted the New Democrats and the Liberals to demand that a combined $120,000 in funds be returned. So again, not the first time that something like this has happened in the Doug Ford administration, and it is happening yet again. With regard to Stan Cho, as I mentioned, Colin DeMello and Isaac Callan of Global News report, and this is on July 20th. Donors to the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party have funded thousands of dollars in meals, flights, and hotel room costs for Willowdale MPP Stan Cho, a former senior minister in Premier Doug Ford's cabinet who resigned amid a spending scandal at Queen's Park. Detailed disclosures from Cho's constituency office show between 2023 and 2026, the MPP billed the office for pricey dinners at steakhouses and lobster restaurants, airline tickets, hotel stays at the Fairmont Chateau Laurier, and even the cost of renting a vehicle from a limousine company. The revelation comes less than a week after Cho was forced to pay the Ontario legislature back more than $16,000 in hotel room expenses that he billed to taxpayers over 3 years. Cho, who lives just 6 kilometers away from Queen's Park, claimed the expenses under a special circumstance designation. The former minister resigned from cabinet on Friday morning, admitting that charging the public for the hotels was a, quote, mistake. Quote, looking back now, I made a mistake. I am taking full responsibility, Cho said in a statement. I did not stop to ask how it would look to a person in my riding working a double shift. The latest expenses, however, raised new questions about Cho's donor and taxpayer funded lifestyle and whether the Ford government and Progressive Conservative Party view them as out of bounds. While riding associations typically generate revenue through donations to the party, constituencies also receive a per vote subsidy, which results in thousands of dollars in income from Elections Ontario, which is ultimately public money. Quote, what you see when you look at the riding association expenses is a whole bunch of expenses that seem to be used to support a lavish lifestyle by Stan Cho, Ontario Liberal MPP Adil Shamji told Global News. It paints the picture of somebody who really enjoys a particularly lavish lifestyle and is essentially using different credit cards to be able to expense these things. All of Cho's expenses were certified by the riding's chief financial officer between 2023 and 2025 and submitted to Elections Ontario Compliance Division. Global News asked Cho's constituency office, the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party, and the Premier's office to outline the necessity of the expenses, but did not receive a response. Gee, I wonder why. Over the course of the 3 years, Cho submitted nearly $100,000 in food and beverage expenses to his riding association, all of which were reimbursed using donor cash and taxpayer funded subsidies. While Cho claimed all the expenses were for meetings hosted, many took place outside his Willowdale riding, including in upscale restaurants in downtown Toronto and other establishments scattered around the GTA and beyond. Dozens of receipts indicate Cho was billing the Riding Association for meals at Sato Sato in Yorkville, Barbarian Steakhouse near Yonge Street, The Score on King Street, the Fisherman Lobster Clubhouse in Scarborough, and the One restaurant in the swanky Hazelton Hotel. At one restaurant alone, Sherry Punjab on Danforth Avenue, Cho expensed more than $16,500 over 3 years for food and beverages, claiming he was hosting meetings at the restaurant. Another $10,500 was spent at Nomi Izakaya, which bills itself as Toronto's premier Japanese tapas bar. Cho also spent more than $9,000 on food, beverages, catering, and room rentals at the members-only Albany Club over the 3-year time frame, and $1,621 at various steakhouses in Toronto. Other expenses include $6,055.12 at Moxie's, $2,724.11 at Maple Korean, and $2,050.96 at The Keg. While some of the expenses, including LCBO and beer store purchases, might have been used for larger employee and volunteer appreciation events, dozens of meals charged to the riding were within the $200 to $300 range, suggesting a small number of diners. Cho's riding expenses also show multiple flights and hotel trips that took the NPP out of the constituency with little explanation about how the travel benefited residences in Willowdale. Between 2023 and 2025, Cho billed the constituency more than $6,100 for airfare on Porter Airlines and Air Canada. While the expense logs don't offer details on the destinations, Cho also submitted $12,700 in hotel expenses, which shed some light on where the NPP had traveled. Over the 3-year time frame, Cho traveled to Ottawa, Banff, Calgary, and Montreal, and charged his riding to stay in upscale hotels such as the Fairmont Chateau Laurier, the Hilton Hotel, the Fairmont Pallister, and the Rimrock Resort Hotel. Quote, there are all sorts of peculiarities that seem to suggest that many of these expenses didn't serve the purpose of representing his constituents, Shamji said, and instead served the purpose of allowing him to enjoy a lavish lifestyle. Cho expensed $318.66 to stay at the Clock Tower Inn, a historic hotel in Strathroy, Ontario, roughly a 3-hour drive away from his North Toronto riding. In 2025, Cho also billed the riding $1,500 to rent a vehicle from Top Limo, which specializes in luxury SUVs, stretch limousines, and party buses. Expense records also show MPP Cho was billing the Riding Association to attend events at various sporting venues in Toronto, a bill that totaled $13,388 over 4 years. Much of that money was spent at the Rogers Centre, where Cho claimed he hosted meetings that required food and beverage expenses. In 2022, Cho submitted $1,138 in expenses for food at the Rogers Centre during a Toronto Blue Jays game. Part of those expenses were included during the provincial election campaign period. In 2024, the price tag escalated dramatically. Cho once again hosted a meeting at the Rogers Centre during a Toronto Blue Jays game and charged his constituency association $6,970.67. During the 2025 snap election campaign, the MPP charged the constituency $3,000 for a suite rental at the Rogers Centre, along with food and beverages. It's unclear what event Cho would have attended at the Rogers Centre that required a suite during that time period. Disclosures also show Cho charged the Riding Association for food and beverages at the Scotiabank Arena and with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, totaling more than $1,600. Global News asked the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party whether supporters are told their donations could be used to fund meal, travel, hospitality, and entertainment expenses of the MPPs. The party did not respond to the question. Well, that's okay, because Doug Ford was asked some questions at a recent press availability that was intended, of course, to first be talking about wildfires, because that's an important situation that is going on right now. But of course, somewhere along the way, there are questions about Minister Cho. Well, I guess no longer Minister Cho, but still caucus member Cho. And well, this is how Doug Ford handled at least one of them.
To ask about Minister Cho.
Hold on, just make sure that the playback speed is right.
Or former minister. He kind of misled the public when he said that he expensed those hotels because of late night sittings, because he expensed them during months where there were no late night sittings. So is it acceptable to you that a caucus member is lying to the public?
It's unacceptable on spending taxpayers' money. He's no longer a minister, but Stan has paid every single penny back, as everyone will, to the taxpayers, and it's already been paid back.
But what about the fact that he's misleading the public?
Again, it's unacceptable to spend money of the taxpayers where, in my opinion, shouldn't have been spent.
Okay. Very terse response from Doug Ford, because he's being asked specifically about the misleading. Very, very, very specifically about the misleading. And of course, well, Doug Ford can't say too much about that now, can he? Because any criticism that he levels against Stan Cho for having misled the public about how public dollars are spent or being accessed then naturally draws the painfully obvious follow-up question. Well, sir, on the green belt, you did. On the skills development fund, your government's accused of. Right? So, Doug Ford, again, it's unacceptable to spend money of the taxpayers. But what about the fact he's misleading the public? It's unacceptable to spend the money of taxpayers in a way that, in my opinion, should not have been spent. And boom. That's the answer. A complete and a total non-answer. He is asked about another MPP immediately after.
Hi, Premier. Colin DeMello from Global News. I'm here to ask as well about Stan Cho, but less about taxpayers, more about the riding association and donors to the PC party. Over the last 3 years, as MPP for Willowdale, Stan Cho has billed $100,000 for meals. That includes dinners at steakhouses, lobster restaurants, and a lot of joints in Yorkville. He's charged airline tickets outside of the riding, hotel stays at the Fairmont Chateau Laurier, and even the cost of renting a vehicle from a limousine company. Question to you, Premier, what is the expectation for a donor to the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party? Are they to expect that their money will be spent fueling the lavish lifestyle of an MPP?
No, again, it's totally unacceptable what Stan has done. He's paid back every single penny. And moving forward, the Board of Internal Economy, they're getting rid of that offer of staying in the city in hotels. But again, he's paid back every single penny, like every single other person will be doing.
Okay.
All right. So again, another very, very terse response, apparently, to Doug Ford. You can try and get away with it so long as when you get caught, you pay back every single penny. And Doug Ford clearly doesn't boot you out of caucus for having done it in the first place, or having misled Ontarians about it. Let's keep on going because the question, the follow-ups keep going and get to the point where we're asking about Mr. Cho remaining in caucus.
Okay, you're obviously speaking about the hotel charges charged to taxpayers.
Anything.
I'm talking about the donors. I don't think he's repaid about 100,000 plus of money taken from the Willowdale Riding Association. Sorry, you were going to say?
No, go ahead.
Is he going to remain a member of your caucus? Is this acceptable within your caucus to bill donors hundreds of thousands of dollars for meals, flights, and hotel rooms?
Everything is unacceptable if you don't put it to the right place. So it's totally unacceptable.
Oh, God. This man is drowning. This man is drowning. Just totally drowning. Okay, let's keep going. He's being asked now about, okay, we're not getting anywhere with Stan Cho. How about Nina Tangri?
So the Riding Association is the right place then?
No, again, Colin, it's unacceptable. And he's no longer a minister in our government.
Richard Southern, 680 News Radio. As you say, Minister Cho did resign over the $16,000 in hotel expenses, but many other of your caucus members, Premier, spent even more. Nina Tangri, $19,000, and above them all, Hardeep Gurwal, $29,000 in hotel expenses, despite the fact that he's within commuting distance. My question, Premier, if you said Stan Cho did the right thing in resigning, should Mr. Gurwal resign as parliamentary assistant, and what consequences should he face, sir?
Well, they're all paying it back, and it's unacceptable. If you guys think for a second I'm happy about this, you're wrong. It's unacceptable. They're all paying it back. Simple as that.
So again, it's unacceptable. They're paying it back. And that's the only thing that appears to matter to this man. They're paying it back. I think it's unacceptable. But there's nothing else. He literally has nothing else. And again, I reiterate, the reason there is nothing else is because everything leads to another thing, right? Stan Cho resigned from cabinet. Okay, the other people who are in cabinet, shouldn't they resign too, especially those who spent more? There's no yes. There's no no. There's no discipline. There's no order. There's no consequence that's going to come from Doug Ford. Other than you have to pay it back. And we're going to eliminate this program, allegedly. Wait for another type of program that allows them to do the same thing, pop up in another way. Because that's what happens with Doug Ford typically. Right? There already was an expense scandal for lodging. Now we have an expense scandal for lodging and a whole bunch of other stuff too. The version he came up with next was new and improved to include more stuff. It's not going to be the end of it. It's not going to be the end of it. That with Doug Ford, that's not the way things work and the way that he manages stuff. All right. They keep drilling him. So
There may be Ontarians, I'm sure, Premier, that will look at the $120,000 in hotel expenses and not see a huge difference between that and the almost $200,000 you charge taxpayers for costs related to your private jet, which you've quickly sold. My question is, if you're directing your caucus members to pay back the hotel money, will you pay back the money for your private jet?
Well, again, I love your questions. Can I tell you something?
he doesn't love the questions.
When I traveled out to Utah, when I traveled to South Carolina, guess where I ate? I ate at McDonald's. I pay out of my own pocket. I've never, ever charged the taxpayers. I'm the only premier in the history of this province that has a zero expense account. I'm going to repeat that, a zero expense account. So I don't expect people to have a zero expense account, even in the opposition, when they used to fly all over the world, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars going over to Asia and so on and so forth. I find it pretty ironic and hypocritical from the opposition politicizing it. I have zero time for anyone that doesn't respect the taxpayers' money, and we're going to continue doing it. But maybe what you should do is look into my expenses and find out that I have zero expenses. The only premier in the history of this province. And yes, I'm the only premier in the history of the province that didn't fly around in government planes. I flew commercial, and yes, I have to charter some too. So I respect the taxpayers. Simple as that.
If it were as simple as that, Boo Boo Kitty, you would be having all these problems. Just saying. Again, let's see here. There's some interesting stuff here going on here. Court here talking about, let's see what here. Kitabi Northwestern Ontario First Nations have put in a formal request for public inquiry into the province's emergency response to the wildfires. Exactly. We'll be getting to that later on the show for sure. Here. What else do we have here? Kit Linda asking another question that would be good. Is using your private cell phone to avoid public scrutiny unacceptable too? Indeed. But you see how that happened, right? If spending $100-something thousand is unacceptable, is spending $200,000 to get out of a contract for a plane you never should have bought in the first place because you tried to pull a fast one on us. Also unacceptable. Will you pay that money back too? Boy, did he get defensive quick, didn't he? Boy, did he break out that violin, eh? I don't expense absolutely anything. Yeah, but you also take 21 weeks off and collect your salary and benefits for doing little to no work. Don't really need to expense stuff when you got that coming in, don't you? You got a whole bunch of perks that come to you just by virtue of the fact that you are the premier. Right? You're in Charlottetown, PEI right now for this big meeting. I'm sure you're not paying for your McDonald's there. I'm sure those meals are provided, and I'm sure those are very wonderful meals. Your lodging is provided. I'm sure it's quality lodging. Right? Just because you don't expense anything doesn't mean you don't get a lot of stuff for free by virtue of your position. Just saying. Uniquely Jillian, they are still all in caucus, though, aren't they, Dougie? Yes, because Doug cannot. How's Doug Ford going to kick him out of caucus without tendering, without somebody saying, "Well, now that you've kicked them out of caucus, when will you be tendering your resignation?" Because narrator voice. At the end of the day, it turns out that Doug Ford loved the taste of gravy, after all. Did you know what they were doing while they were charging all these expenses? Where's that question, reporters? Uniquely Jillian, Dofo is so deep in this he can barely even flounder. Kitlenda, completely avoiding the question. Kitlenda, guess what? Buying that plane was an expense account. Oh, boom. Oh my God. Tabby G, the king of hypocrisy. No ability to look at the expenses. Yeah, right. Exactly. The freedom of information requests. Elaine, petty is such a beautiful color on you, dear queen. Well, yeah. I know. Oh my word. Yeah. Doug Ford not delivering the best performance there, and wow, really defensive, and eyes burrowing holes into that reporter. That is not the eyes of a man who is joyous. We turned around and says, I really like your question. No, he didn't like that question. He didn't like that question at all. Oh boy, he got his back up. So yeah, then after that long stretch, that was all one uninterrupted stretch, by the way. I paused it along the way to be able to, intervene. But that was all one stretch. Now, there's a couple of other questions about the wildfires, First Nation response, and then we get back to once again this question because people are obviously not satisfied with the answers.
The Minister Cho stepped down, it seems, on his own accord, based on a judgment that the spending wasn't appropriate. Have you asked the cabinet ministers on that list who've also spent that money to step down? And do you need to, frankly, shuffle your cabinet at this point?
Well, Stan stepped down, and he did the right thing, and he paid everything back. So we're going to make sure that we put a microscope under this, and it won't happen again. And I apologize for it even happening in the first place.
Again, right? He's hoping that this is going to work for him. But in that question, it's Stan Cho decided on his own accord to step down. And then Doug Ford turns around, he stepped down and he did the right thing. Well, if that stepping down is the right thing to do and there's other people in your cabinet who did it, why isn't them stepping down, either voluntarily or being voluntold to do so? And not in your vocabulary. Because you didn't ask them to do it, and you don't want to even seem to entertain the concept here in this press availability. Why would that be, Doug? Why would that be? Why would that be? Now, Ontario Conservative MPPs, if you do not, and same thing with federal Conservatives, if you do not want to cross the floor and nobody's coming knocking on your door to offer you a Senate seat, in order to escape your daily grind, you can quit your caucus and sit as independents. That's how they got rid of Stockwell Day. Just saying. Can just quit your caucus and sit as independents. Your leader's no good. He's now dragging you down with him. Cut bait. Cut bait. Whoops. Sorry. Here. I don't know if I had lined up a clip to show you. Nope. Okay. I did say that. So Doug Ford then continues in his answer to say that it's very frustrating. I think I may have cut that off when I stopped it here. But he says it's very frustrating to say the least, but thank you for the question, is how he ended that one. And then, of course, there's going to be a follow-up on something related.
Say the least. But thank you for the question.
Premier, also, just more broadly, when it comes to this type of spending and this rule with the Board of Internal Economy, is this not a natural side effect of the government sitting fewer days and longer hours into the night, where it puts MPPs specifically in your caucus, in a position where they felt that they could spend this money, taxpayer money, to stay in these hotels? Should you not be, frankly, lengthening the calendar and sitting longer?
Oh, the Board of Internal Economy is made up of all parties, so any decision gets approved by all parties. And again, we're going to watch every single penny.
Okay. The question there was, because you're not working a lot of days and people are working later, maybe you should just extend the session, not have people work that late on the very few days you choose to work, and therefore people wouldn't perhaps mistakenly feel that they're entitled to use funds that they're actually not entitled to use. The Board of Economy is made up of all parties. Any decision gets approved by all parties. We're going to watch every single penny. Absolutely nothing to do with the subject matter. Absolutely nothing to do with the subject matter. That man is drowning. He's got no answers. Because, like I said, it becomes a cascade of questions that all lead up to the fact. When are you going to repay that $200,000 yourself? If this type of behavior is unacceptable, why isn't it unacceptable for everyone? If Stan Cho stepping down was the right move, why isn't it the right move for everybody else? And since you personally have been accused of doing way worse than all of these people have done combined, when are you going to be doing the thing that you decided was the right thing and step down yourself? He can't exert discipline on the party on this issue, because what he imposes on others is what he should also be imposing on himself, or what the party should be imposing on him. Colin DeMello and Isaac Callan of Global News also reported on July 17th, in the summer of 2024, as progressive conservative MPPs began charging taxpayers for hotel stays in downtown Toronto, members of the Ford government pushed quietly to update the expense rules for elected officials. Specifically, members of the government were looking to expand the special circumstances category to go beyond extreme weather events and include night sittings at the Ontario legislature. Elected MPPs are subject to a 50-kilometer rule. Anyone living within driving distance of a Queen's Park is not entitled to an accommodation benefit. The only time they could bill taxpayers for downtown Toronto hotel room was if the city was pummeled with a snowstorm so severe that it would impact their ability to travel. Those expense categories are controlled by the Board of Internal Economy, a legislative body composed of members from all official parties, along with the Speaker, which oversees financial affairs at Queen's Park. According to meeting minutes accessed by Global News, Education Minister Paul Calandra and the government House Leader Steve Clark first raised the issue in May 2024 and tabled a motion to update the allowance. Around the same time, some MPPs within the Progressive Conservative Caucus who live within the 50-kilometer radius began skipping the commute home and staying in Toronto hotels, charging Ontario taxpayers for the privilege. In 2025, those claims took off. Tourism Minister and Willowdale MPP Stan Cho charged $11,000 for downtown hotel rooms. Brampton East MPP Hardeep Grewal expensed $13,000, and Mississauga Streetsville MPP Nina Tangri charged more than $8,500. Then in November 2025, Calandra and Clark raised the issue a second time at the Board of Internal Economy. Quote, moved by Mr. Clark and seconded by Mr. Calandra, that members who are ineligible for accommodations be reimbursed for the actual cost of accommodation during days that the Assembly is authorized to sit until midnight, the board's document read. The motion was carried, allowing MPPs to use the, quote, special circumstance designation to book a hotel room during a night sitting when MPPs debate legislation until midnight to pass laws within a certain window. The regularity of those sittings is controlled by the government when they look to move legislation through quickly. So it's not a Board of Internal Economy decision when the decision is made to go more quickly. It can be a Board of Internal Economy decision that they be reimbursed fully if they need to use hotels on days that the legislature goes to midnight. That's a Board of Internal Economy decision. How many days that the legislature is going to sit and going until midnight is not a decision of the Board of the Internal Economy. That's the question Mr. Ford was asked. And he pulled a Danielle Smith, suggesting that decision-making was up to a body that it doesn't belong to. 1 month later, Minister Cho submitted more than $6,000 in hotel expenses, all of which were approved by the legislature. As his government faced a wave of backlash, Premier Doug Ford told Global News he expected MPPs to pay back the funds, but also attempted to put the charges in context. Quote, "It was a third party. All three parties agreed to it." Ford said, "We all had late sittings. No excuse. They're paying it back." Yes, but is there a comparison to how other parties used it? Because that would be useful. NDP leader Merritt Stiles scoffed at the suggestion that government members would require special accommodations for night sittings and said most MPPs are always prepared for these situations. Quote, "I had sheets in my office. I've slept on that couch a few times," NDP leader Stiles said. And that's what a lot of MPPs do if there's a big night sitting. In an attempt to diffuse the growing scandal, the Ford government announced it would look to change the rules that govern provincial MPPs by removing the special category designation. In a letter to members of the board, Government House Leader Steve Clark said he would look to scrap the policy altogether less than a year after pushing for the change. House Leader Steve Clark, the same guy not involved in the Greenbelt thing. Interesting. Wherever he goes, there seems to be a scandal that emerges. Interesting. Liberal MPP Stephanie Bowman, a member of the committee, said she would be willing to support the measure only if the PC party agreed to provide a full accounting of the hotel expenses. Quote, "This was a policy that was ripe for abuse," Bowman said. "There are lots of ways we can tighten up this policy and provide the necessary accommodation to Toronto area MPPs in truly extraordinary circumstances." So these moves that Premier Ford is blaming on the Board of Internal Economy were actually proposals that were brought forward by Steve Clark, who once had to resign from cabinet amid the Greenbelt land swap scandal, stepped down after reports from the province's Auditor General Integrity Commission revealed a rushed and flawed process that heavily favored a small group of well-connected developers. The Ontario Integrity Commissioner released a report finding that Clark violated ethics rules and failed to properly oversee the selection process for housing development lands. In his letter addressed to Premier Doug Ford, Clark acknowledged that his presence in the role had become, quote, "a distraction," that he needed to take accountability for the situation. He resigned from his cabinet position as housing minister, but remained a member of the provincial parliament for the riding of Leeds, Grenville, and Rideau Lakes, and I believe he remained a member of caucus. So this guy who did that, who managed to develop a Russian flawed process that Doug Ford never saw anything of, allegedly. And Paul Calandra, who, again, we are mentioning it, was caught in a legal issue with his family back in 2000, earlier, prior to 2008. According to the Ottawa Citizen, again, the opening paragraph from the story, which is always mind-blowing. Before he was elected in 2008, the Prime Minister's parliamentary secretary, Paul Calandra, was embroiled in an ugly family dispute in which he was accused of taking money from his dying mother and suggesting he should kill his sister. Those are the people that made the suggestion. And now these are the people those are the people that made the suggestion, and the people who took advantage of it are people that Doug Ford does not believe deserve any sanction other than having to pay the money back and stepping down from cabinet should they choose to do so. but not because he would actually require it. Then we have Brampton MPP Hardip Singh Grewal, also brought to us by Isaac Cullen DeMello. A progressive conservative MPP is being accused of using public funds to further the private interests of his own family. Global News has learned just days after the revelation that he billed taxpayers thousands to stay in downtown Toronto hotel rooms. On Monday, the Ontario NDP asked the Integrity Commissioner to probe Brampton East MPP Hardip Grewal, claiming he was using his publicly funded constituency budget to advertise in a newspaper run by his father. Grewal, who was already under scrutiny for expensing $27,000 on Toronto hotels over the past 3 years, despite living in Brampton, appears to have regularly advertised constituency events in the Punjabi Post, which is run by his father, Jagdish Singh Grewal. MPP Grewal just got caught with his hands in the taxpayers' pockets, spending nearly $30,000 on luxury downtown hotel stays and now potentially breaking ethics rules to enrich an immediate family member with tax dollars, Ontario NDP leader Emeritus Stiles said. Stiles filed a complaint with the Integrity Commissioner on Monday morning, alleging the advertisements were a conflict of interest because Grewal's father stood to benefit financially from them. Grewal said in a statement he would seek guidance from the Integrity Commissioner. Quote, the Punjabi Post is a popular ethnic news outlet in Brampton's in Brampton, a community with a large Punjabi-speaking population. Political parties of all stripes have advertised with the Punjabi Post, he wrote. Prior to advertising, I should have consulted with the Integrity Commissioner and have since reached out to her office for advice. According to federal filings submitted as part of the NDP complaint, Jagdish Singh Grewal is the director of the Punjabi Post. The newspaper was founded in 2002 as a daily Punjabi news outlet with 35,000 readers, according to a media kit posted on its website. The same media kit lists Jagdish Singh Grewal as the point of contact for advertising, insertion orders, sales, or contracts. Past issues of the newspaper included in the NDP complaint show advertising for MPP Grewal's events, such as a summer barbecue emblazoned across the front of the newspaper. The advertisements are not partisan, meaning they promote Grewal as a local MPP rather than the Progressive Conservative Party, something the NDP argues means they were approved by his office. A review of the member's expenses has led me to believe that the member may have violated the Members Integrity Act 1994, and I am requesting that you offer an opinion on the matter, Stiles wrote in her letter to the Integrity Commissioner. We believe the member may have used public money from his legislature budget to purchase services from a business solely owned by an immediately family member. Examples sent to the Integrity Commissioner by the NDP include a Canada Day spread that ran for 3 days and other seasonal greetings. Quote, we've called on the Integrity Commissioner to look into MPP Grewal's spending habits because there's a clear pattern of ads placed in the local paper owned by his father, Stiles added. If MPP Grewal's family members are benefiting from tax dollars, the people deserve to know. Separately, Grewal has faced a week of questions after he claimed more than $27,000 to stay in Toronto hotels, despite his constituency office being 43 kilometers from Queen's Park. Premier Doug Ford lambasted? I actually don't know how that one's pronounced. I'm going to say lambasted the spending from some of his MPPs and pledged they would repay what they had claimed without offering any detail. Quote, it's unacceptable. That's not how we operate. We have to be prudent fiscal managers, Ford said on Friday. It's just unacceptable, and they're paying back every single penny of it. It's not clear, however, if any of the other MPPs have paid the money back. And as we can tell here, it seems that it's clear that some of them are paying it back for the hotel stuff, but it doesn't seem that they are being made to pay back the money that should go back to constituency offices, because there are two funds that some people have only made expenses in one, and some of the people on this list have made expenses in both. Just saying. Stan Cho, who spent $16,000 on hotels despite living 6 kilometers from Queen's Park, has already resigned amid a growing spending scandal for the Ford government. The Willowdale MPP said the money he had claimed was within the rules, but admitted it had been a mistake to make the taxpayer cover the cost of his hotels. Stiles said the issues were coming from the top. Quote, Doug Ford sets the tone for his caucus, she said. Clearly, MPPs who have spent tens of thousands of tax dollars to fund their lavish lifestyle continue to have his confidence, but what else can you expect from a premier who tried to buy himself a private jet on the people's dime? That thing's going to keep coming back again and again and again. And then today, because every single day there seems to be a focus on a new person. So Stan Cho, well, maybe not every day, every 2 or 3 days, Stan Cho, and then Mr. Grewal. And today, well, it's Mr. David Piccini. the Ontario Labour Minister. According to John Woodward, CP24, Ontario Labour Minister David Piccini's constituency association spent thousands of dollars at the Four Seasons Hotel, a limousine company, and an elite Toronto club records show, as scrutiny continues over how donor and public money is being spent by those connected to the Ford government. Opposition critics claim those expenses are a new aspect of an expenses scandal that has resulted in the resignation of one minister and an order from the Premier for other PC MPPs to pay back some $100,000 spent on hotels in Toronto. Quote, "These folks, they're living large," said interim Ontario Liberal leader John Fraser in an interview. "It's excessive." But Piccini's staff and his constituency association's CFO said many expenses are more reflective of fundraising ventures and constituency business involving the association than any personal luxury items enjoyed by the minister himself. The limousine expense was to shuttle people other than Piccini to and from an Ontario PC event, and the Four Seasons expense was not an overnight stay, said Piccini Communications Director Michael Figueiredo. Quote, "Members of all political stripes are allocated budgets to the riding associations to support their role in the community. This can be used to support fundraising, volunteers engagement, stakeholder outreach, or to host community events," Figueiredo said. Riding association finances are governed by and must comply with Ontario's election finance laws, independently overseen by Elections Ontario. That's quote. Fraser, meanwhile, said the expenses, which have not yet previously been reported, are a new aspect of a scandal that began when it was reported by Global News that former Toronto Tourism Minister Stan Cho had spent some $16,000 of government money on hotels in Toronto where he lives. It later emerged that over a dozen nearby MPPs had also accessed the public money, which is meant for emergency stays, for more than $100,000. Cho ultimately resigned from cabinet, and Ontario Premier Doug Ford ordered the others to pay the money back. Cho's constituency association records show that they spent about $100,000 on food and hotel stays from Ontario to Alberta, including $12,700 on hotel expenses at the Chateau Laurier Hotel in Ottawa and the Rimrock Resort in Banff. A constituency association is an organization formed in a riding to support a political party or a candidate. They typically have a governance structure that includes a board which oversees the expenditures and are required to file annual disclosures with Elections Ontario. Those records, which were accessed by CTV News, show the revenues for the PC Northumberland Peterborough Constituency Association are a mix of donations and Ontario taxpayer-funded per vote subsidy, which in 2024 was $9,940 for the PC party in that riding. The records show that contributions to the riding association swelled from $269,155 in 2023 to $449,471 in 2024. Piccini became Labour Minister in the fall of 2023. Expenses at restaurants and hotels rose from about $12,000 in 2023 to almost $50,000 in 2024. Among them, $1,800 at the Four Seasons, almost $2,000 at Toronto's Albany Club, and $337 at Antonio Park, which was a luxury restaurant on the 51st floor of the Manulife Centre. By 2025, the expenses at restaurants and hotels had dropped to about $11,500, though that year the association spent $500 on the Four Seasons and $2,520 at Book a Limousine, which describes itself as a Toronto Airport limousine service, the records say. In 2024, the records show that the constituency association spent $388,600. The biggest expense at $140,000 were tickets to the leadership dinner, which was listed at $1,000 a ticket and headlined Ford and Cho. Martin Bogdan, the association's CFO, said that the Constituency Association Board approved the expenses and the financials were audited. Quote, "Any kind of expense, the board would pass a motion, and if it's not passed, the money doesn't get spent," he said, adding the board would have closely scrutinized everything over $1,000. Bogdan said that all expenses on the records are for a year's total, so what may appear to be a large expense could have been several smaller bills. One large line item, which was $8,000 at the Beamish House pub in Port Hope, was likely for hosting something like 10 board meetings over the course of the year, he said. Over at the legislature, Piccini is facing an integrity commissioner investigation over whether he broke any rules in decisions about who got grant money out of the $2.5 billion skills development fund. We reported on that. One aspect of the complaints that sparked the investigation were that he attended the Parisian wedding of a lobbyist after his clients were awarded millions of dollars. The hotel Piccini was accused of staying at then was the Four Seasons George V. There's no address listed on the Four Seasons expense. Bogdan said he was certain the Four Seasons expense listed was in Ontario and it wasn't in Toronto. Quote, I can tell you 100% there were no overnight stays paid for by the Constituency Association for David Piccini to stay at the Four Seasons in Toronto, Bugden said. He also said he didn't believe that the rise in donations or expenses were related to the Skills Development Fund. Quote, I really doubt it. He's a pretty honest guy. I doubt if there's anything like that going on with David Piccini, said Bugden. CTV News also examined a sample of constituency associations from a variety of other high-profile politicians. In 2024, John Fraser's constituency association raised about $20,000 for a total income of $34,000, including the per-vote subsidy. The only meal expense was the Lone Star Hunt Club for $238 and travel for gas for $257. NDP leader Merritt Stiles' constituency association had a total income of $37,273, including a per-vote subsidy of $8,474. The two meetings hosted were listed as the George Chuvalo Center at $375 and Sugar Bomb at $270. So yes, a very marked difference in the spending habits of both. So that's the first thing that Doug Ford has going on. And the second thing that he has going on, and it was hinted at here or mentioned previously by a member of the Dam Fam, is that there is some action being brought by Indigenous communities in Ontario because the response to the wildfires that are going on, there are several communities that needed to be evacuated, and I think it is Fort Collins First Nation, if I'm not mistaken, are wondering if their community will actually even be there when they return. That's when they return, when all of this is over, because maybe there's nothing to return to. You would think that there would be I don't know, just maybe more motivation to act. And it would appear that this has not been the case specifically. And yesterday, they held a press conference that caught my attention. There's a little moment excerpt from it here on YouTube, where they called out Doug Ford for not having been exactly honest about what was going on, and then there was more action that was taken. So let's show you this. Let's replace Doug Ford on our screen with more Doug Ford on our screen at first. All right.
Topic on the wildfires. Some Ontario First Nations are saying should have been done more to prepare for the wildfires. I wonder if you agree with that assessment.
I totally disagree with that comment. We have constant communication. We're going out to the First Nations. We've moved close to 2,000 First Nations communities on the plane. We provided them in a hotel. We provided them with food, any other expenses. Now keep in mind, on reserve is a federal responsibility. Ontario's taken the lead on this. I'm going to repeat this. On reserve, the feds have the responsibility to take care of First Nations, but we're taking care of them. We're doing everything we possibly can. We have 155 fire crews out there, close to 900 wildland firefighters going out. It's well organized in Thunder Bay. I saw every single office. We saw all the meals being prepared, the Red Cross, all the other organizations, Ontario Corps, everyone is helping out. So I totally disagree with their comments.
So in that video, when Doug Ford is saying that it is the federal government's responsibility to take care of Indigenous people, that is true, Indigenous people on reserve. But it is also true that wildfire response is a provincial strategy. So when Doug Ford is saying this, Doug Ford wants you to believe that it's up to the federal government to actually send the planes themselves and find the equipment, whatnot, and send it in and get the people out, and that be a federal-led operation. And therefore, Doug Ford goes, but we're doing all of that. So he's trying to create the impression that he's picking up the federal slack. That's not necessarily the case. In a case like this, where something is the responsibility of the federal government, but they may not have the equipment required to deliver the service because the service delivery is provincial. Because the federal government and the provincial governments coordinate. And the federal government ensures that the provincial government will be made whole, at least financially, for the costs it incurs to take care of a federal responsibility. If a special deployment of Canadian military is needed to assist, that will be made available. There are things like that. But don't get the impression from what Doug Ford is saying that the federal government has like this whole rescue outfit out there that they could have sent up. Right? That's not necessarily the case. So Doug Ford is hoping that you do not know that when he's giving you this response. And Doug Ford's response here about the level of coordination and a very proactive response is not being experienced the same way in Indigenous communities. So let's see if I can make this the full screen. There we go. Let's see what they had to say.
Last week, when these wildfires started in our territory, all that was talked about on the news was the smoke conditions in the city of Toronto. There was not one word mentioned on the national media about the situation of people literally running for their lives in these fires. I was at the AFN last week along with some of my fellow chiefs that are up here today. And on Wednesday, the Ontario caucus had broke and said, we want to have an emergency meeting on the wildfire situation. And at that time, it was Chief Pantanzanine and myself that requested this. And we broke on emergency caucus. We said we should bring this to the floor at the Assembly of First Nations the next day, which we did. So that's why we're here again. And one of the major reasons why we held this press conference was yesterday, Premier Ford did a press release at 10:30 a.m. yesterday, and I had the opportunity to listen to his release. And not once in his speech did he mention First Nations people. He praised himself and his government about what a wonderful job they were doing in fighting these fires. And I reached out to my fellow chiefs, our leaders, and I said, we have to counter what Mr. Ford is saying. What he is saying is not true. He's creating the narrative so that he can basically lie to the Canadians and lie to the people of Ontario. While there's appreciation for the professionalism and dedication of frontline personnel, there is a strong view that leadership failures within the provincial system requires immediate action and accountability. Immediate leadership changes within the Ministry of Natural Resources must occur. The chiefs believe that there's been a serious breakdown in leadership and confidence in the senior management level with MNR. Specifically, the chiefs are seeking the immediate removal of the current MNR Director, Chris Cuthbertson, the immediate removal of the Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for oversight of MNR fire operations. These actions should occur pending an independent investigation, such as a public inquiry into this year's emergency response and broader systemic issues. The chief's concern is directed at executive leadership and decision-making rather than operational personnel. A public inquiry and independent review of wildlife fire management and transfer emergency responsibilities. The chiefs are calling for an immediate public inquiry and an independent investigation into Ontario's wildlife response during the current situation. The review should examine operational decision-making, emergency coordination, communications with First Nations. evacuation planning and execution, resource allocation, and overall provincial preparedness. The chiefs believe that the province should be transitioning responsibility for emergency wildfire response and coordination from MNR to the emergency preparedness and response. The rationale is that the emergency management should be coordinated through the ministry specifically established to lead provincial emergency preparedness and response. Importantly, the chief wishes to recognize and acknowledge the professionalism of frontline personnel, including local MNR staff, wildlife firefighters, water bomber pilots, incident commanders, supervisors, emergency personnel working directly in affected communities.
So there you have it, kits and cubs. And along with that, here, we have some developments on that front that of which you should be aware. Here, one of them, I had this open and it all disappeared on me. Hold on, I need to find it again. A little slippery today. There we go. According to APTN's Emma Honeybun, First Nation leaders in Northwest Ontario are calling for an immediate public inquiry and independent investigation into the province's emergency response and handling of the wildfires that have destroyed Collins First Nation, also known as Namaigu Sisagagun, and Whitewater First Nation over the course of a week. The province's Public Inquiries Act is meant to investigate matters of public interest, said Wilfred King, chief of the Gull Bay First Nation. The lack of communication and evacuation support should horrify all Canadians, and our community was on its own. The federal government has responsibility here too, King continued. We won't accept any jurisdictional disputes in the year 2026. How could this happen? And more importantly, how do we make sure it never happens again? I do want to add that to my previous comment that what Doug Ford was trying to get away with passing the buck to the federal government doesn't mean that the federal government doesn't have any responsibilities, and they may not have been lacking as well in them. I'm just saying that Doug Ford trying to make it seem that Ontario was virtuous and they did all the work that the federal government didn't do or slacked off on is a bit of quite a bit of a misrepresentation here. Chief Michelle Solomon of Fort Williams First Nation, who was present in support, agreed that the best thing going forward would be to examine the current situation so that it doesn't repeat in the same way. Quote, "We know wildfires aren't going anywhere," she said, "but the complete devastation of a community should never happen. I stand with these chiefs in calling on the government to implement a public inquiry and investigative review into all this happened, and to move forward to not have something like this happen again," she said. The call was made at a Tuesday press conference in Thunder Bay, which was organized by the Anishinaabe Aski Nation, leadership from Gull Bay, Whitewater, and Fort Williams First Nations, as well as Anishinaabe Nation, Nokiwin Tribal Council, and Anishinaabe Aski were on hand for the conference. According to King, the event was in direct response to Ontario Premier Doug Ford's conference Monday when he fielded a question from the media to talk instead about meeting with fellow premiers to discuss a national fire strategy. The question was later addressed by Ontario's Minister for Natural Resources, Mike Harris, who said that, quote, "There is year-round coordination with First Nations communities across, obviously, Northern Ontario, but around Ontario when it comes to emergency management. It's something we take very seriously," Harris said. "We really encourage all communities, especially in the North, to have emergency plans and work with us." During the Premier's news conference, Ford also discussed the provincial emergency alert system and the transportation of evacuees to 13 hub cities. King said he listened to the conference and not once in his speech did Ford mention First Nations people. Quote, "He praised himself and his government about a wonderful job they were doing in fighting these fires, and I reached out to my fellow chiefs, our leaders, and I said we have to counter what Mr. Ford is saying," he said. So that gentleman that you heard speaking in that press conference on behalf of those who were there was indeed Wilfred King, chief of the Gull Bay First Nation. Multiple members of the panel who were representing communities that were and are being evacuated due to the fires said that self-evacuation had already started before they received formal notification from the province. Chief Lawrence Wanakamik of White Sand First Nation said that although leadership was preparing for evacuations by 4 p.m. on July 13, they didn't receive a recommendation from Ontario at 9:30 p.m. By that point, several community members had already left. Accommodations had been made in hotels. Despite the warning, Wanamick referred to it as a self-evacuation due to the delay. I'm not sure that previous um, paragraph whether or not that should have read they didn't receive a recommendation from Ontario at 9:30 p.m. or by or until 9:30 p.m. Because what comes next doesn't really jive with. So there might be an error on that one. I apologize for that. Despite the warning, Wanakamik referred to it as a self-evacuation due to the delay. Chief Solomon Atlukan of Iyabametung First Nation, also known as Fort Hope, said Ontario was negligent and that he supports the push for an inquiry. He said that when a fire started near his community, it was directly across the lake, approximately. Hold on, something just appeared on my screen to block it. Technology. I tell you. All right. There we go. What the heck is going on? All right. Just stay there. He said that when a fire started near his community, it was directly across the lake, approximately 7 kilometers away, and that members did not receive support before the wind shifted 2 days later. Quote, hotspots were coming all over the place and they still did not move, Atlukan said. He received a call at midnight and the federal government evacuated the community the following day. Quote, I appreciate what the federal government did, he said, but noted that there were no water bombers or support from the province when it came to preventing the fire. In an attempt to control the blaze, firefighters from the community were deployed to fight hotspots before things got out of control. Quote, we're not just sitting around yelling at government, he said. We had our own people drive around the lake looking for smoke so our own firefighters could put it out. Our community didn't know our community didn't know it was going to be a wildfire. It was extremely hot, Atlukan continued, and it was dry, and that one day that thunderstorm came by, and a few days later, that's when all the fires started. He said the mentality of the leadership must change and that they must fight together. Regardless of who you are, we are a nation, and there are many people on our side, regardless of the color of their face, he said. During the press conference, Chief Helen Pavola of Collins First Nation also confirmed that, quote, nothing remained but just ashes after the community self-evacuated on July 13. The videos and pictures that are out there right now don't do it justice. It's horrible. It's awful. Those words aren't enough to explain what we saw, she said. While members have status, the community is unrecognized by Canada, she said, and did not receive support from the province. Quote, my members barely escaped with the clothes on their backs, Pavola said. My community was left to evacuate without notice and support. Pavola said she appreciated Ottawa's willingness to extend services and that it is treating us like any other First Nation in Canada, but called on Prime Minister Mark Carney to approve the claim to be recognized as a First Nation in the eyes of the government. Quote, we need your commitment and help today, she said. Chris Plain, Deputy Grand Council Chief of the Anishinaabe Nation, also pushed for the federal government to officially recognize Collins. And, I'm learning right now that there are First Nations here that are not recognized. It's unbelievable. Quote, this community is in profound hardship, he said, and is in urgent need of support. While all recognized First Nations across the country benefit from federal recognition, granting access to programs, funding, and resources, Name Gusigagun remains excluded. This lack of official recognition has significant ramifications, particularly in these moments of crisis. Plain said because of the community's unrecognized status, members are barred from vital housing and funding programs through Indigenous Services Canada and other government-funded organizations. Quote, recognition enables communities to access funding for housing, infrastructure, economic growth, and social services. Without it, communities like Namegu Gisagagun remain vulnerable, marginalized, and incapable of pursuing sustainable futures, Plain continued. Although he said even when communities are recognized, many miss out on opportunities due to bureaucratic delays and political indecision, quote, such principles undermine the principle of fairness and justice that are fundamental to reconciliation. So we have that here with regard to the wildfires. And so, yeah, this is a situation that is probably going to, again, put something else on the Ford docket that it's going to need to deal with because, yes, if an entire community gets destroyed, usually you have an inquiry into that. So we'll see what happens. In other news that we wanted to mention, because we said that we had a series of other stories that involved justice-related themes that we wanted to talk about today. I had no idea that the Doug Ford stuff would take this amount of time. So we will touch upon a few things. For those of you who have been waiting for the Tate brothers to get their comeuppance, you might be a little happier today because it has recently been reported by CNN, at least, that this is Holmes Librand, Dalia Fahid, Hannah Rabinovich, and Ale Matwani, that U.S. Marshals arrested social media influencers Andrew and Tristan Tate in Miami Saturday on an extradition request from the United Kingdom following investigation into sexual offences reported by 7 victims, according to the UK Crown Prosecution Service. UK officials accused the brothers of abusing women in the East of England region, just north of London, between 2010 and 2017. Andrew Tate, a self-proclaimed misogynist with billions of views online, faces 42 charges, including, trigger warnings, rape, human trafficking, indecent images of a child, and assault, according to the UK Crown Prosecution Service and Bedfordshire Police. Tristan Tate faces 17 charges, including sexual assault, rape, and trafficking, officials said. Quote, officers from our major crime unit have been working closely alongside the Crown Prosecution Service in both national and international law enforcement agencies as part of this complex investigation, Bedfordshire Assistant Chief Constable Karina Thomas said. The Department of Justice confirmed U.S. Marshals arrested Andrew and Tristan Tate pursuant to extradition proceedings, adding the arrests, quote, were made in accordance with the treaties and law enforcement agreements governing Justice Department extraditions. The brothers will appear in Miami federal court on Monday. Their attorney Joseph McBride appeared on Monday. Their attorney Joseph McBride told CNN on Sunday. The brothers are expected to reject the extradition request, McBride added. The brothers are innocent, McBride said, and criticized UK's move to seek extradition. Quote, there's a long-standing agreement between the UK and Romanian governments that the UK would not seek extradition while the Romanian proceedings are pending, McBride said. Those proceedings are ongoing right now. That agreement exists because no nation gets to trample on the judicial sovereignty of another for political convenience. In a statement posted to X Sunday, McBride said the brothers were arrested for their politics and are being held in solitary confinement. The brothers were in Washington, D.C. earlier this month where they held political meetings, McBride told CNN. CNN has reached out to Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier for information about where and how the brothers are being held. Romanian prosecutors previously accused the brothers of trafficking women across Romania, the United Kingdom, and the U.S. and sexually exploiting them. The Tates have repeatedly rejected the allegations made against them in that case. CNN has reached out to Romania's Justice Ministry for comment on their arrest. Advocates have warned against the pair's rising tide of influence among young boys and men. Andrew Tate is known for his aggressive speech about male dominance, female submission, and wealth. At one point, he was suspended from major social media platforms. The brothers, who have dual American and British citizenship, face dozens of new charges added onto previous charges brought by the Crown Prosecution Service after evidence was submitted by Bedfordshire Police, authorities said. The new charges were brought after officials had investigated reports made by 4 additional victims in the East England areas of Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, police said. Andrew Tate is also facing a civil suit in the UK, which is being brought by 4 women who accused the social media influencer of rape. A spokesperson for Tate previously told CNN that the client, quote, categorically denies these unproven and untested allegations. Matthew Jury, an attending representing the 4 women, welcomed Tate's arrest. Quote, we do not yet know whether these new charges relate to the complaints made by my clients or the other women, Jury said in a statement Sunday, but any step that advances the proper administration of justice deserves to be welcomed. The brothers left Romania after Romanian authorities lifted travel restrictions on them arriving in Florida in February 2025. Upon their arrival, they found themselves in the heart of another criminal investigation when Attorney General Uthmeier announced the probe led by the Office of Statewide Prosecution. They had taken aim at Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who previously suggested they were not welcome in his state. Quote, when Americans who are unfairly imprisoned abroad return home, you betray them, Andrew Tate said on X last year. You better nail me now. Let's go. Arrest me. Well, there you go. Thomas, the Bedfordshire police officer, said there's no place for male violence against women and girls. We will continue to work tirelessly to support victims and investigate all reports made to us. So, good stuff happening there. There has been a little bit of giggling because of the way um, one of the Tates was dressed when he was arrested, which provoked a laugh. And unfortunately, if I were able to find it very easily, I would do that and show to you. But yeah, let's just put it this way. Definitely not. Definitely not. Um, the attire that screams master of the manosphere. We will just say. In fact, if I were able to find it very easily, how would I put it? I would be gleefully showing it to you because, well, let's just say that the thing that was there compared his attire to that of Blanche Devereaux in The Golden Girls, and the people had decided that Blanche wore it best. And that's about all I could say. Uh, so hopefully, before the end of the show, at some point, I will find it. We'll be able to show it to you. So that's what they are having happen to them. In other news about people who are getting something that they might deserve, according to the Canadian press, Pat King has had more legal issues. The Ontario Court of Appeal has found Freedom Convoy organizer Pat King guilty of intimidation and has ordered a new sentencing hearing. King was charged with a number of offenses for his leading role in the February 2022 demonstration that gridlocked much of downtown Ottawa for more than 3 weeks. The protesters used hundreds of vehicles, including big rig trucks, to choke the city streets and blasted horns at all hours. Some residents later testified at a federal inquiry that they were afraid to leave their homes and had trouble sleeping. The demonstrators were loosely organized, with many opposed to government COVID-19 pandemic restrictions and to the Liberal government under Justin Trudeau. Some participants said they wanted to overthrow the government. The protest eventually ended after Trudeau invoked the Federal Emergencies Act for the first time in Canadian history, granting extraordinary powers to government and police to remove the vehicles and shut down the demonstration. King was convicted in November 2024 of 5 counts, including mischief, counseling mischief, and disobeying a court order. He was given a 12-month conditional sentence, which included 9 months of time served and 3 months house arrest with a year of probation. At the same time, King was acquitted on 3 counts of intimidation. The Crown appealed the acquittal on 1 count of intimidation for blocking or obstructing a highway. The Crown also argued that King had been given an unusually lenient sentence in the original trial. The appeal court found the trial judge erred in law by finding, The appeal court found that the trial judge erred in law by finding the King's participation in the Freedom Convoy was part of a lawful protest. Quote, put simply, criminal conduct is not less criminal because it occurs during a lawful protest, the panel of 3 judges wrote in a decision released Friday. The appeal court ruling said King should have been found guilty of intimidation through a correct application of the law and convicted him. The court has ordered a sentencing hearing to take place at a later date. The judges wrote that King's initial sentence was a lenient penalty and noted the trial judge was concerned that imposing a harsh sentence could create a chilling effect on participation in political protests. Quote, this was not a peaceful protest that unfortunately grew out of control and was allowed to go on and morphed into a criminal activity, as the trial judge suggested in his sentencing reasons, the decision said. Rather, this was from the outset a coordinated, targeted attack on Ottawa residents aimed at coercing change through highly disruptive criminal conduct. Boom. Exactly. It wasn't a protest like any others. It was a coordinated, targeted attack. masquerading as a protest. And this judicial decision obviously got it right. So, waiting eagerly to find out what the additional sentence is going to be and whether that will be in addition to what he's got, or whether it will just be considering something that will run concurrent. Also, our friend Jeffrey Rath, according to Ashley Stewart, this is from July 15th in Global News. It says, and there was an update here. It says, the day after Global News published the story, Jeffrey Rath published a post on X that touches on facets of the story. That post has been embedded at the bottom of the story. And so let's just go to the bottom of the story and see what he had to say about that. Okay. There we go. All right. So when that comes on, I don't think it needs to be read into the record right now. According to Ashley Stewart of Global News, another First Nation is questioning millions in alleged withdrawals from a trust overseen by Alberta separatist lawyer Jeffrey Rath, and his professional corporation court documents obtained by Global News reveal. The allegations from Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation emerged from material disclosed in a separate court battle between Rath and the Tall Cree First Nation. That case led a provincial judge on Friday to grant an interim Mareva order against Rath and Jeffrey R. W. Rath Professional Corporation, which operates as Rath and Company. The judges found reasonable grounds to believe assets could be moved or dissipated before judgment. A Mareva order, also known as a freezing order, is an extraordinary pre-judgment remedy that prevents a defendant from transferring, hiding, or liquidating assets before a case is decided, allowing the collection of any eventual financial reward. During a hearing on the matter on Wednesday, Justice John Gill extended the Mareva order until August 11th and granted a receivership order putting an independent court officer in control of assets and records so the missing trust money can be traced and protected. Referring to the Tall Cree and Sturgeon Lake cases, Gill said, this raises a concern about a pattern of behavior by the respondents and potential intermingling of trust assets. A co-founder of the Alberta Prosperity Project, Rath is a leading voice in the separatist movement and has long represented First Nations in landmark treaty settlements. Rath now faces escalating simultaneous legal challenges from two First Nations, each alleging that his firm charged trust fees when they were never told about and withheld financial records that should have been disclosed earlier. Those cases come on top of 8 other First Nations that have been involved in court or law society proceedings against Rath, a Global News investigation found. Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation has now raised concerns about $12 million in withdrawals from the Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation Trust, including more than $11 million paid to Rath and Company as administrative fees and another $575,000 tied to legal expenses, according to an affidavit filed on Tuesday by Chief Sheldon Sunshine. The trust distributed the settlement funds to beneficiaries and held the minors' share until they reached adulthood. Rath's firm was the fund's sole trustee. Rath has not responded to the allegations. The latest fight is tied to a long-running legal battle between Sturgeon Lake and Rath and follows a February 2025 Alberta Court of Appeal ruling that upheld an order that Rath could not enforce the 20% contract behind his $28.6 million fee from the nation's Treaty 8 settlement. The nation has also been fighting to remove Rath as the sole trustee of the trust, alleging incorrect payouts, difficulty obtaining information, rude treatment by Rath and Company staff, and incomplete financial statements. The allegations from Tall Cree and Sturgeon Lake have not been proven in court. Like Tall Cree, Sturgeon Lake alleges it has been unable to obtain financial statements for its trust. The last financial statement it received covered 2021. Subsequent years produced only financial summaries for 2022 and 2023, despite multiple requests, court's documents allege. It was through material filed in the Tall Cree court case on Monday that Sturgeon Lake learned auditors were questioning $12 million in withdrawal from its own trust paid to Rath and Company, according to Chief Sunshine's affidavit. Sturgeon Lake's lawyers received the Mareva injunction order, as well as 4 letters from Tall Cree's lawyers revealing questions from financial auditors Doan Grant Thornton to Rath about the trust withdrawals. They zeroed in on 4 withdrawals, 2 from January 23, 2024 for $9.8 million and $1.67 million paid to Rath and Company as administrative fees, and 2 2023 withdrawals for almost $500,000 and $75,000 described by Rath as legal expenses for trust management. According to correspondence with auditors in the court documents, Rath states that the $11.47 million was a retroactive administrative fee charge for 2017 to 2024 based on a review of administrative fees charged by similar trusts, which he says were well within the range of those fees and permitted by the trust agreement. Sunshine argues Rath's corporation drafted the trust agreement. In a December 2024 email to Grant Thornton, Rath says the external legal expenses were necessary to pay law firms such as Parley McLaws and Reynolds Mirth. But when Rath provided invoices, the auditors noted both firms described their services as reviewing the retainer agreement between Sturgeon Lake and Rath and Company, the same lawsuit that Sturgeon Lake had brought against him. Separate court documents obtained by Global News indicate that Parley McLaws sued Rath in 2024 for around $140,000, claiming that Rath and his company had failed to respond to repeated requests to pay invoices for legal services they had carried out for him, dating back to November 2021. 3 months later, the case was dropped. Global News was unable to determine why. When Grant Thornton asked for an arm's-length legal opinion on whether the withdrawals qualified as administration costs and other reasonable expenses under the terms of the trust agreement, Rath refused, saying his own reading was sufficient according to the letters from Rath and the auditors included in Sunshine's affidavit. Now, you don't need to check that, just trust it. Trust my take on it. My reading is sufficient. Yeah, that's a red flag. When the auditors pushed back, saying this was insufficient audit evidence, Rath continued to disagree. He labeled the request out of scope and unnecessary and threatened to terminate them if they did not complete the audit without it, according to correspondence, including in Chief Sunshine's affidavit. Quote, "At this stage, we feel it is incumbent upon you to meet your responsibilities and complete the audit without any further delay, and without the need for an outside legal opinion," Rath allegedly wrote. "If you do not agree to complete the audit on the terms we have outlined, consider this letter as our notice of your termination as auditor of the trust and our expectation of your confidentiality under the audit engagement agreement." Sturgeon Lake says it is still awaiting news about the $28.5 million fee. Rath is allowed to seek a fair and reasonable fee, but Chief Sunshine says no review date has been set. In May, the nation filed an application to have the money paid into court. Rath, however, had previously indicated that he no longer has most of the money. Court records from 2022 indicated that litigation funders had advanced Rath $10 million for the Sturgeon Lake case, and he repaid them $23.3 million after settlement funds were received. Sturgeon Lake has no record of that payment or funding agreement, documents indicate. In his affidavit, Sunshine, whose counsel met urgently on Monday evening to discuss the audit letters, is deeply concerned about the revelations. Rath claims to be a treaty expert in helping all these First Nations, yet looking back on our court cases and our dealing with him, it was more him taking advantage of the situation, he told Global News in June. In his affidavit, he said he worries, quote, "Many children will never see that money from the settlement and that our nation will never see any return of the disallowed contingency fee following the eventual review." The Sturgeon Lake case parallels the dispute between Rath and the Tall Cree First Nation. After courts cut his 20% fee on Tall Cree's $57.6 million settlement, Rath's corporation was ordered to refund $8.5 million to the trust. Court filings later alleged Rath PC charged more than $6 million to the same trust in 2024, and bank records showed an $8.5 million check from a trust account payable to Jeffrey R.W. Rath Professional. In his defense against Tall Cree's latest claims, Rath denies wrongdoing and says audited financial statements identify all fees and costs charged to the trust and that all money coming in and out was disclosed in accordance with trust agreement. The trust agreement provision gives the trustee broad powers, including moving trust property within Canada and charging for services performed by them, including the services of acting as trustee. Rath did not oppose the extension of the Mariva order on Wednesday. In his reasons for granting the extension of the order, Gill said that there was a strong prima facie case that Rath had made, quote, improper payments out of the trust, and that let's try that again. In his reasons for granting the extension of the order, Gill said that there was a strong prima facie case that Rath had made improper payments. One more time. In his reasons for granting the extension of the order, Gill said there was a strong prima facie case that Rath had made improper payments out of the trust and that he personally had assisted in a breach of fiduciary duty. Referring specifically to the $8.5 million check taken from the Tall Creek Trust, he said it was, quote, made in direct contravention of the orders of the Justice Lee and the Court of Appeal. There's also real risk that the respondents have been actively taking steps and will continue to take steps to frustrate the process of locating the missing money, Gill said. And Rath decided his Twitter response to all of this that was reported in the article would be: breaking Rath fee dispute. The present litigation arises from a fee dispute with a client who negotiated a reduced 20% rate on a contingent fee agreement. Following a very successful outcome, the chief and counsel then proceeded to litigate for years on the basis that the contract they agreed to by band council resolution was, quote, unreasonable. Chief and counsel pursued this litigation to have the 20% fee paid to themselves. Upon review of the fee agreement and the circumstances of its execution, the review office, being the judicial expert on fees and fee agreements, found as a matter of fact and law that the agreement was, quote, reasonable. They appealed this decision. Justice Lee of the Court of Queen's Bench found that a lawyer who took on the risk of what could potentially turn into a 10-year piece of litigation should be paid on the same basis as a realtor. The same judge made a number of other erroneous findings, including that a lawyer who has won more treaty Aboriginal constitutional rights cases than any lawyer in Alberta, including cases at senior appellate courts of Canada and the Supreme Court, was not qualified to engage in the practice of treaty and Aboriginal rights law. The agreed 20% fee was reduced to 5% on the basis of these findings, which were confirmed to amount a series of serious judicial errors by a unanimous Court of Appeal. Justice Wakeling of the Court of Appeal would have overturned Justice Lee's decision in the court below, commenting on the numerous errors in reasoning and the demonstrable fact Mr. Rath's expertise and acumen in his area of practice, referring to over 320 reported cases brought forward by Mr. Rath over his career. Justice Walkening found the fee agreement was reasonable. Okay. I was wondering how long this was going to go on because it looked like he was writing a novel here. Justices Franz Slatter and Kevin Freehan agreed that Justice Lee had erred repeatedly in fact and law, and without remitting the case to the court below for a rehearing, simply replaced Justice Lee's decision with their own. They effectively ruled that an after-the-fact rewriting of the terms was a negotiated agreement from 20% to 5% was, quote, reasonable. At no point in this litigation did any court, including the Court of Appeal, ever rewrite the terms of the settlement trust approved by 94% of Tall Cree members voting on it. The trust required 20% of the settlement funds to be paid, quote, as legal fees as a first charge. This was agreed to after the fact with full disclosure of the fee by 94% of the members who voted. The payment of the fee to the chief and counsel was rejected by both Justice Lee and the Court of Appeal following successful action funded by the trust. Chief and counsel now claim the costs of defeating their claim on the funds is a misappropriation of trust funds. The settlement trust expressly provided for the payment of legal expenses, settlement and administrative fees and expenses. Jeffrey Rath maintains was done in accordance with the terms of the trust. The present orders arose from a series of applications where adjournments were requested due to the unavailability of counsel or time to prepare a proper response, and where Mr. Rath was unable to fully participate due to extremely trying personal, family, and health circumstances. Mr. Rath, for these valid reasons, was unable to fully participate in instruction of legal counsel or the provision of evidence other than to request through counsel adjournments, whereas counsel were forced to argue against relief sought with limited input or instructions from Mr. Rath. That was a lot of words to say. I'm not sure what. Over the course of his career, Jeffrey Rath has created billions of dollars in wealth and economic opportunities for the communities that he has served. Yeah, big deal. That doesn't absolve you in this particular case. If you did something you were not supposed to do in a particular case, past good deeds do not erase a current bad deed. Thank you to all of my friends and fellow Albertans who have expressed their support. This matter remains in active litigation. Every allegation of impropriety is disputed. There will be no further comment at this time. So that was his big thing. So there you have it, kids and cubs. A whole bunch of other little issues related to this kind of stuff that you might want to be aware of. And for some reason, I had two more, and they do not seem to be here. So I will look them up very quickly. One involved an Ontario MPP called Chris Scott, who has been charged with assault. Interesting. According to Kenneth Armstrong of Trillium.ca, A pre-trial has been held in relation to the criminal assault charges against MPP Chris Scott. Scott, who was charged under his legal name Chris Van Scott, did not appear in court on Wednesday. He was not required to because his lawyer was present. This is also from about mid-July. Marcela Ahurnada appeared by video as an agent for Scott's lawyer, Michael Lacey, in front of Justice Catherine McCurley. Ahumada said a pretrial was continued on Tuesday and asked that the matter return to court in 2 weeks. The next appearance is scheduled for July 29th for an update. Originally from Countville, Scott ran as a progressive conservative candidate for Sault Ste. Marie, handpicked by Premier Doug Ford and parachuted into the riding last year after he had worked for Ford and former MPP Ross Romano. Scott was removed from Ford's caucus after he was charged. He now sits in the Ontario legislature as an independent. Court documents show Scott was arrested by Toronto police in connection with incidents that occurred on September 19, 2025 in Sault Ste. Marie. The charges sworn by Sault Ste. Marie Special Constable allege Scott committed an assault using a high chair as a weapon. He also faces a second charge of assault. None of the allegations have been tested in court, and Scott is considered innocent until proven guilty. At the end of April, Scott had expressed hope that the assault charges would be dropped, and I guess that did not happen. It also says that the house that he lived in is going up for sale. Not sure if that's particularly relevant, but it is part of the story back from April, reported by Brandon Walker of the Trillium here. And this here, at the time, he told Sue Today that he had no plans to resign and was planning a trip to Sault Ste. Marie for constituency meetings. Quote, I took a leave from non-essential appearances and duties in October, May 20, that comes to an end and will return to a sense of normal, he said by phone. May 20 is when Scott's case was set to return to court. Quote, based off what the judge said, we're expecting this matter to end May 20th and be behind us. Scott said he didn't think the fact that his house was for sale was newsworthy, although he agreed that many people in the area knew where he lived. Everyone saw the Halloween decorations go up. It's a great community. Scott said he's hoping to return to the Progressive Conservative Party. I think the number one thing is getting these charges dropped and returning to a sense of normal, he said. Not being independent is included in that sense of normal, so we'll see what happens there. Scott wouldn't say if he's had conversations with Ford about returning to the party. Quote, I'll keep private conversations private for now. The final one that we have is about Lori Idlot, the former NDP MP who crossed the floor to sit with the Liberals. And there had been some ethics issues regarding some businesses she owned, and there's been some decisions made on that. According to Leanne Sanders of APTN, former NDP MP Lori Idlot, who crossed the floor to the Liberals in March 2026, has declared her stake in a privately owned Indigenous management consultancy and Vision Insight Group and has been placed under trust. Former NDP MP Lori Idlot, who crossed the floor to the Liberals in March 2026, has declared her stake in a privately owned Indigenous management consultancy and Vision Insight Group and has been placed in a trust so she won't receive any income from the firm. A July 16th disclosure to the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner shows Idlot gave up control of the company according to a report by Nunavut News. Idlot will not be permitted to use money from the enterprise for political campaigns and cannot sell her stake in the company. Details on the federal government's public registry stated, quote, the trust was established as authorized by the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner under Section 19 of the Code to entrust my interest in a private corporation that is a party to contracts with the Government of Canada, Idlot said in her disclosure. The trust was not established for political reasons, and I am ordered by the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner as required by paragraph 41.3.1b of the Parliament of Canada Act to not derive any income from it, including the distribution of assets on its termination for the purpose of facing a nomination contest, a leadership contest, or an electoral campaign, she added. The Nunavut News report said Envision's Insight Group received over $583,000 from federal agencies since 2021, while Idlot was MP for Nunavut, according to parliamentary news organization BlackRock's reporter. BlackRock's reporter, an online outlet that focuses on politics, was first to break the news about Envision Insight Group being placed in a trust, according to Nunavut News. According to the Federal Registry, Idlaut previously declared her ownership of 2 rental units in Iqaluit under the Conflict of Interest Code for members of the House of Commons. And I believe that that is all of the information I have on these subjects for us today. Last but not least, since we're talking about trade and all of that kind of stuff, and the bridge and all of that, yesterday, Canada delivered the best possible response to what was going on. So did the Beaverton, actually. The Beaverton had a really interesting take on it, in that when we have a situation like this come up, how would I say it? We just sort of roll our eyes and look at the skies like, oh my God, not this crap again. Like, really? Do we really have to do this again? And yeah, that's pretty much the feeling. So there are some people responding to that and saying, it's like, listen, America, it's like, we're not getting all worked up about this because, well, I think this is Todd Maffin. We've just stopped caring. We just don't care anymore. Sign the deal, don't sign the deal, walk away, don't walk away. We don't care. We just don't. Do what you do, do whatever you'll do, we'll adapt. Well, according to CBC News, Canada will celebrate the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge this week, the Federal Minister of Infrastructure's office said Tuesday, but there will not be a celebration with the United States. Quote, in light of trade action threatened by the United States earlier this week, it would be inappropriate to proceed with a celebratory event between the two countries, said Jenna Gassabay, Director of Communications with Minister Greg Robertson's office. But the government is, quote, committed to the bridge being open on July 27th, the email statement said. Canada will celebrate the milestone among Canadians on July 24th. So yeah, Canada did the ring, ring. Yeah, hi United States. You know that party that we had planned for the 27th that we were all going to all show up together? Yeah, well, something came up. That would be you. Something came up, and well, we can't really make it anymore on that day. We're not available. Life threw us a curveball, and so we're just going to have to scale down things and just celebrate with close, intimate family, amongst ourselves on the 24th. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's sad, isn't it? Yeah, I know. Yeah, we were so looking forward to it too. Yeah. Oh, okay then. Well, anyway, that's what's happening. Sorry to disturb you any more than that. Bye. Classic Canadian passive aggressiveness. We'll have our own party without you. It's so delightfully petty, isn't it? And so perfectly Canadian. Isn't it? Come on. It's absolutely fantastic. And so, yeah, we're going ahead with that. Local dignitaries, including Windsor's mayor and the area's former longtime NDP MP, reported they have been invited to Friday's event. It's not the first time there's been a change to the opening ceremonies for this bridge. In June, public officials were set to attend a similar ceremonial event on a Friday, when federal officials announced it was being delayed at the request of the United States. According to Robertson's office, the agreements to open the bridge remain in place, quote, the Canada-Michigan Crossing Agreement and the recently negotiated parallel agreement in principle between Canada and the United States remain unchanged, the email statement said. Haha, there you go. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and we're just going to do our own little thing. And also, Theomedakis had a great cartoon yesterday that appealed to my sense of inner evil, and I found also was very typically Canadian. It's a 4-panel cartoon that shows Justin Trudeau speaking with Mark Carney, and Mark Carney's on the phone. Goes, "I need you now. It's time we play hardball with Trump, and you're the only person who'll make him absolutely nuts." And then Justin Trudeau's on the other line. "Mark, I'd love to be your chief trade negotiator." I approve because it is evil in the way that I like using your powers of evil for good, which at the end of the day is typically Canadian again, right? Get Linda, I'm still waiting for them to announce at the last minute they won't open it. I wouldn't put it past them. Neither would I. Neither would I. To be totally honest, neither would I. So yeah, that's happening. Of course, with the Gordie Howe Bridge, it seems that the details, as we mentioned, have been released. So I'll bring that to you. According to Stephanie Ha of CTV News, amid conflicting messaging and questions surrounding the agreed upon revenue sharing between Canada and the US, details of the deal to open the Gordie Howe International Bridge were released late Tuesday. The official details come more than 10 days after the federal government announced the delayed bridge would open on July 27 and contrasts previous comments made by Prime Minister Mark Carney. According to the online release, the deal is described as a proposed agreement in principle that runs parallel to the original Canada-Michigan Crossing Agreement signed in 2012. The deal states that Canada will share 50% of net bridge and crossing related revenues with the US for the first 15 years. Quote, net bridge and crossing related revenues is all revenues collected with respect to the bridge less all incurred operating costs of the bridge, the deal reads, confirming reporting from Bloomberg last week. And this is causing a big problem for Mark Carney. The deal does not mention interest costs or debt payments related to the bridge, meaning Canada will repay its debt, but only after splitting net revenue with the United States. That stipulation conflicts with comments Carney made in an interview with CTV News Calgary on June 12th, in which he said net revenues would only be shared after debt costs were recovered. Quote, we get the revenues, then the servicing of the costs of the bridge and paying the debt of the bridge, and then what's left over. There's a split of that for 15 years, he said at the time. Days later, at an announcement in London, Ontario on July 16, Carney reaffirmed that position, saying bridge tolls would be shared until all debt is repaid. Would not be shared until all debt is repaid. It's not splitting the tolls of the bridge. It's an agreement for 15 years to split net revenues, Carney said. Splitting of tolls, any sharing of the toll revenue won't happen until all of the debt is repaid. We will split net revenues over the course of the first 15 years, and those net revenues are after operational costs. Those changes are a significant shift from the original deal in which Canada agreed to in the $6.4 billion construction costs and collect 100% toll revenues until it recoups its full investment. The agreement estimated that recoupment would take at least 50 years, after which Canada and Michigan would equally split toll revenues. As previously reported by CTV News, funds now being shared with the Americans will go towards the United States-Canada Economic Development Fund that will be controlled by the US. The deal also states that both countries will, quote, reasonably agree on the objects of that fund, which, quote, will be for the benefit of the United States and trade between Canada and the United States. The release, meanwhile, confirms what a senior government source told CTV News and outlines the U.S. will need to agree if Canada wants to increase tolls by more than 10% or lower them below compared regional averages during the first 15 years of the bridge's operations. So a lot of people are saying, what do you guess? How much do you want to bet that a portion of this revenue will be going back to the Mahoon family to compensate them for what they're going to be losing on the Ambassador Bridge? And then, of course, here, the wanting to agree, U.S. agreement to tolls is also another way to try to protect the Maroon family, because heaven forbid that the new bridge should charge tolls that are below compared regional averages during the first 15 years. They're the other bridge directly in the region. If toll changes are proposed, the deal indicates that the U.S. must, quote, provide its consent or notice of withholding of such consent within 30 days of being notified. Otherwise, consent shall be deemed to have been provided. The published agreement also says officials will develop and finalize the legal, financial, and administrative arrangements necessary and will do so as expeditiously as possible. Conservatives had been calling for the full terms of the deal to be released publicly and were considering using parliamentary tools to force disclosure. Published details of the deal come on the same day the federal government said both countries will no longer have a joint celebration on Friday to mark the opening of the bridge. The move is in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's latest threat to slap a 50% tariff on a variety of Canadian goods on August 19th, even if they are compliant under the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. According to 3 proclamations signed by Trump on Monday, the U.S. is taking issue with provincial bans on U.S. alcohol, supply management on dairy, and certain tariffs and quotas on cars imported to Canada from the United States. U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, meanwhile, had indicated on Monday that he would be attending Friday's ceremony alongside his Canadian counterpart. On Friday, I will be with Dominic LeBlanc, with Mark Wiseman, and we're opening a bridge, Hoekstra said at the Pacific Northwest Economic Region Annual Summit in Edmonton. But a senior government source told CTV News that while Hoekstra and the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick were expected to attend Friday's ceremony, will now be a Canadian-only celebration. CTV News has reached out to the U.S. Embassy to Canada, but they declined to comment. Robertson's office has confirmed he will be in attendance on Friday. The bridge has been ready since last month, and there was expectation it would open in June after Carney appeared to confirm reporting from U.S. media outlets. But days later, a ribbon-cutting ceremony and the opening was put on hold, with Carney insisting at the time that there was, quote, no big drama. Boy. Boy. Construction on the bridge began in 2018. The cable-stayed bridge, which will connect Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan, will be among the top 5 longest bridges in North America. So yeah, this is going to cause problems for Mark Carney, because he was saying it was going to be net profits. And here it really looks that the terms of the deal are that it's going to be not net profits, but net revenues, but not including debt repayment, which is a very, very, very different proposition. And I'm not sure why Prime Minister Carney, if we're not going to ascribe intent, I'm not going to say he lied, but why he got that wrong, because that goes very, very, very much against brand for him. He's supposed to be the guy that we trust, and he's supposed to be the guy that's on top of all these types of things, the guy that understands numbers, and the guy who's the smartest person in the room, and the guy who's so detail-oriented that he knows his files better than his ministers do, and he gets impatient with you if you don't know your file. I'm not sure about what the Mark Carney, who gets impatient with other people who don't know their files, thinking of Mark Carney, who made this erroneous claim, or what appears to be erroneous claim at this moment. Mark Carney doesn't have a lot of political capital that he can afford to burn like that. I understand that there are times where you can't be transparent. Like, he couldn't go to the microphone and start begging and say, about stunting or spiking the football and say, he thinks he got a big deal, but we got the better of him. Because, everybody watches stuff, and that gets back to people. But yeah, claiming that it's a division of net profits when it's really net revenues, and not counting debt servicing. That's a very, very different beast, and I'm not sure how someone with Mark Carney's credentials makes that error. So I don't want to say it's an intentional mistake, but I also don't understand how he makes that error. Like I said, Mark Carney can ill afford to develop a reputation as someone who doesn't tell us the truth. So it will be interesting to hear how the government explains how this mistake might have been made, because he didn't make it just once, he doubled down on it the next day. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us, because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. If you would like to help us, kids and cubs, one of the ways you can do that is by scanning this QR code, which brings you to our YouTube page where you can smash with our buttons like, share, and subscribe. Give them a little tickle. We love it when you do. Also, click on the notification bell and select all so you can find out when we have shows on. And if you are watching this show and you are not watching it live, but are doing so on a tablet and a cell phone fewer than 7 days after the original broadcast, please swipe left on the comment box and offer us some hype points if you haven't done it already 3 times this week, because hype points, when you give them to us, helps smaller audience channels like our own gain a bigger audience and gain more visibility. And we thank you for that help. And if you would like to help us in other ways, one of the ways you can do that is by making a financial donation to the show, because we do incur some costs to bring it to you, and we would be grateful for your help. Please scan that QR code, and that will bring you to the Emergency Hydration Fund, which is our tip jar at the Blue Sky at the Beaver Lodge, and you can find that on our coffee page. That's coffee ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. You can make a one-time or a recurring donation that you can stop anytime you want to. You're not being locked in, and we appreciate whatever you donate there. We get about 95 to 97% of your donation there. If you want to donate through our YouTube channel, we have super chat stickers, and we also have memberships. So please get one today, and we get about 70% of your donation there. And we thank you very much for the support that you offered us last month. We just got notice of what our last month's revenues are, and we thank you for being good to us. And finally, if you would like to avoid the US CE Tech Bros, particularly today, or want to avoid the United States, considering that they are threatening us yet again, well, we have a way for you to do that as well. TrueNorthEagerBeaver@gmail.com is our email address. And if you send us a donation that way, it goes from your financial institution to ours, and there are no service charges. The CE Tech Bros down south get absolutely nothing. And plus, we get 100% of your donation. So that is win-win-win. The share that would have gone to them goes to us. How'd you like that? Boom. So if you would like to donate that way, we would be very grateful. We thank you for all of your generosity. And please remember that if you're not able to donate financially, the gifts of your attention and participation are the ones that matter most to us. And that same email address, TrueNorthEagerBeaver@gmail.com, can be used to send us your thoughts about the show, good, bad, or ugly. We love compliments and constructive critique, suggestions for guests for the True North Eager Beaver interview project. That will be a lot of fun. And of course, your good news stories to help us with the doom scrolling. Yes. And any questions that you would have about politics that you would like us to answer, or about how we put the show together, we would be grateful to receive those. And we thank you for taking the time. If you're looking for us at the socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, and on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home. We have True North Eager Beaver Instagram. We have the Damn Fam Discord that you can go to keep the conversation going with the best Damn Fam in all of podcasting between shows. And we have our Beaver Bites Substack, as well, of course, as our coffee page, as we mentioned before. So lots of ways you can communicate with us. And don't forget, right down here, if you're watching on YouTube, in the comment section, which is the best way to ensure that we actually do see your comment. And we make an effort to read everything that you send us, even though we're not able to respond to everyone. Because democracy is something that you do, we have a few petitions for you that we have been talking about lately. We have our Commons petition E7395, which calls on the House of Commons to stop funding Stornoway as an official residence for the leader of the opposition. And if that's something that you agree should be the case, then you can sign on to this petition that I have included right here in the chat for you, kids and cubs. Hopefully you will be able to do that and sign that. Remember, when you participate in an our commons.ca petition, that you sign the petition and you get an email verification, and your petition isn't signed, considered signed, until you click on the email verification. We have 26,354 signatures for that one. The other one that we have is that band in Saskatchewan that's trying to encourage CBC and Sportsnet to come to some type of agreement so that we can maintain the tradition of having free hockey night in Canada on Saturday evenings to act as a national unifier. And I think that that's a great initiative. So that has been included in the chats, and we've got 16,263 signatures for that so far. And last but not least, Kids and Cubs, the Manitoba flood appeal by the Red Cross.ca. If you have a couple of dollars to help brothers and sisters in need, I'm sure that they would appreciate you making a donation, and you can do that by going to their website at give.redcross.ca/page/26 MBFLA for Manitoba flood appeal. So once again, give.redcross.ca/page/26 MBFLA. Or if you would like to donate by phone, you definitely can do that by dialing 1-800-418-1111. That is 1-800-418-1111, or by sending an email to wecare@redcross.ca. That's wecare@redcross.ca. And thank you for everyone who is able to help. Remember that every dollar you donate will be matched by the government of Manitoba. So when you spend $1, you actually provide $2 worth of assistance. And that as well seems like a very good deal. All right, kids and cubs. And don't forget our hashtags. I forgot to mention them. Kids who cook, kids who cultivate, and kids who craft, because we want to see what good things you're up to. All right, kids and cubs, that's all we have for today. It could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now at the count of 3, can I please have a little audience participation in the form of you saying, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear it. Ooh, yeah, that is the good stuff right there. And here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, just a quick little bit of news about some Canadians who make us proud. And we are going to start on the tennis courts, kids and cubs, because, of course, tennis being something that speaks to my heart. And we've had a winner of a tournament last week, a young Canadian woman named Kayla Cross, if I remember correctly, is her first name. Yes, it is. Won a tournament in Granby here in Canada. It's the 75 level tournament in Granby in the final. And that brings her ranking back close to her career high in singles, with a lot more of the season left to go. So it looks like she is setting herself up to have a season where she will improve in the standings, which is very interesting. At an event in Lincoln, USA, Cleve Harper, Canada's best doubles player among the men, lost in the final to some pretty accomplished, let's put it say, players. I think some of them in there have won some Grand Slams. 6-3, 6-3, but was a finalist at the Challenger event in Lincoln, Nebraska, in the United States. And then we had more success from Canadians in the form of, I'm just looking for it right here, another doubles duo who made a final and lost a close battle here. This is at the 25 event in Louisville, Kentucky. We have Adam Farag Kao, and we have Joshua Peck, who teamed up and made the final and lost 10-6 in the final set, super tiebreaker. So it was a very close match there for them, and hopefully a sign of success to come. And then also again in Granby in the women's doubles, another final appearance. They lost 6-2, 6-2, but Mia Kupres and Alexandra Vagramov made that final. Nice to see Mia Kupres back to the game. She had once been in the top 200 in the world in doubles, and I guess probably had an injury and has been away from play for the better part of the last year. So I believe that this might have been her return tournament. So good for the Canadians there. And we were also following last week the fortunes of the Canadians under 17 and under women's team at the World Basketball Championships for that age category. And they made it to the semifinal where they played the United States and unfortunately lost there and had an opportunity to play for the bronze medal match, but unfortunately finished fourth, losing to Australia 64-57 in the final. Canada was in the lead after the third quarter by just one, I believe, but Australia was able to claw back. But still, a very, very good performance. And speaking of Canadians who make us proud, there's going to be a lot of people to cheer for because for those of you who follow it, the Commonwealth Games will be starting very soon. Unfortunately, Summer McIntosh will not be in the pool as she's skipping this one to prepare for the Pan Pacifics, but we will have a whole bunch of other people. And if we are lucky, hopefully we'll be able to have Emma Sachs return to give us a little update on what to expect from the swimming events at the Commonwealth Games. Devin Haru is already on his way, if not already there. I believe there might be some early competition starting on Thursday, but with the official stuff starting on Friday. And our flag bearer has been chosen to participate in this. And I believe, if I remember correctly, because I'm doing this from memory, it would be Katie Dondino, who is one of our para athletes, because at the Commonwealth Games, I believe that the para sports and able-bodied sports are taking place at the same time. There isn't a para Commonwealth Games. So that looks like that will be the case. I see it here. She's a wheelchair basketball athlete, and she was named as the flag bearer. She's a two-time Paralympian that led Canada to the women's 3x3 gold medal at the 2022 Commonwealth Games and added a world championship title last year when she was named the tournament MVP. The 36-year-old from Pender Island, British Columbia, also helped Canada capture gold at the 2019 Para-Pan Am Games and serves as a mentor to young athletes. Dondino will carry the Canadian flag into Thursday's opening ceremony in Glasgow, where you can watch live on CBC Gem and CBC TV network starting at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Quote, "I hope this moment inspires young athletes, especially those in adaptive sport, to believe that they belong and that anything is possible. For the first time, each country and territory in the Games will also bring a special baton to the opening ceremony, custom designed to reflect its national culture. The honor of carrying Canada's baton was awarded to 41-year-old lawn bowler Ryan Bester, who is appearing in his 7th Commonwealth Games. Quote, "To help lead our team into the stadium alongside Katie is something I will never forget," Bester said. So there you go, kids and cubs. Very much looking forward to that. And hopefully things will get exciting. It seems here that according to predictors or prognosticators, that Canada is expected to bring home 8 medals in the Olympic class swimming events that will take place. There's a couple of events at the Commonwealth Games that are not being competed at the Olympics as well. And expecting some good performances from Josh Leando, Oliver Dawson, Kylie Mass, and of course, Canadian relay teams there. So, of course, there are other sports, but like the Olympics, swimming and track and field are the two marquee sports over the course of the games. So, hopefully, that's where the overwhelming majority of our medals will come from, because we have a decent swim team and a decent track team. And just got a little bit of personal good news that the person on my men's curling team, senior men's curling team, who didn't announce that they were looking to move on after 3 years, has agreed that they would like to keep playing together. So we are still a team. Yes. So we will start the season next year if they can find 2 other people to join us as a C division team in our league, and see if we can still keep on growing with 2 players. And and I also see in my ad in my inbox that I've received an invitation to appear on to appear or to do a show with Lady Laura of O. So tomorrow I'll be recording an O show. Hit. I'm down for it. Let's go. Let's have some fun. Hey, it's a good day so far. Look at that. The team is still together, sort of, and I've been invited to the O show. So that's a good start to the day. And of course, I had damn fun time with you. So I'm in a fantastic mood, and I hope that you are too. All right. Amour et bisous. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.